And good morning. It's a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. He's Griffin. I got an alert on my phone this morning. It said it's 11 degrees, but warmer than yesterday. Swear to God. That's what my phone wanted me to know. Warmer than yesterday.
Well, that's nice of the phone.
11 degrees. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Can only go up from here, right?
It barely feels like it's even 4. I mean, like, yeah, let's rock. Why would you give me that? Like, what?
Well,
my weather hat.
To make you feel better, I guess. Yeah.
It's the most backhanded compliment. It's now 17 degrees apparently, so got that going for me, which is nice.
You're warm over there. I got 16 degrees over here, so I don't know.
Yeah, now we're partying. We are partying. All right, Thursday edition of the program is brought to you by the CIAA tournament.
Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament back to CFG Bank Arena February 25th through March 1st. You can get your tickets now. They are available at Ticketmaster.com. Again, for the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena February 25th through March 1st.
Coming up on the program today, we will, of course, break down the Academy Award nominations announced this morning. I am a Brutalist man. We're going to be Conclave and the Brutalist. Did
you watch Brutalist?
I haven't seen any of these films.
Oh.
Not
Brutalist looks good.
I mean, I guess that's not true because I watched A Real Pain last week, so I'd seen one film. I don't even think that was nominated
I'm
for...
sure you accidentally saw something else, right?
I don't believe that was nominated for Best Picture. What were the Best Picture nominees? I don't think I've seen any of them. Best Picture nominees were... Wicked was nominated. I have not. That was probably the most likely that I would have seen. I have not seen Wicked. Oh, you went? You saw Wicked?
Dune 2, Best Picture.
Yeah, I did not see Dune 2.
That was pretty good. You're missing out on that one.
I have seen Cerro.
Wicked.
The Bob Dylan movie was nominated, A Complete Unknown.
Amelia Perez.
I haven't watched that. I'm Still Here. I've never heard of it. Nickel Boys, don't know it. The Substance is that Demi Moore movie, right?
That sounds right.
I believe that's the one.
I think.
I'm sure. Conclave, The Brutalist, and Anora, which I had never heard of either. So I am on top of it. You think Griffin's like, I'm going to offer a dynamite tipping. I think it was good. Yeah, I mean, it was nominated for Best Picture, but I think it was good.
Who you got for Best Actor?
I don't know. I haven't seen any of these.
Adrian Brody in The Brutalist?
Maybe.
Timothy Chalamet?
Maybe.
In the Bob Dylan movie?
Who knows? Why are we... I wasn't... This was a bit that I was going to talk about the Academy.
I mean, I'm ready, though.
No, you're not. You haven't seen these films either.
I've seen one. I've seen more than you.
Right, because you saw Wicked.
I want to see what the best
and
sound...
That's what you got.
See if Twisters is going to... I guess no one's going to beat Dune.
Oh, my God. We're not talking about this. Anyway, yes. There's our big breakdown of the Oscar nominees that were announced this morning. Best of luck to all of the people.
How was Ain't No Love in Oklahoma not nominated for original song?
Unbelievable.
I'm glad you agree.
Unbelievable. I have nothing. I don't even. I think I've heard of Ain't No Love in Oklahoma. I think I've heard of it, but I don't think it's a good song.
The Luke Combs song? What do you mean?
It's not good.
What do you mean not good?
It's not a good song.
Best original screenplay, Real Pain was nominated for.
Great one. That's the only film in any of these categories that I've seen, and I saw it 4 days ago, was A Real Pain. That's the list.
You think Kieran Culkin should win Best
He was very good.
Best Supporting Actor?
I wouldn't know how to compare him to any of the other nominees.
Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. Edward Norton was in the Bob Dylan
Maryland's
movie.
own Edward Norton.
Jeremy Strong was in The Apprentice.
Got to root for the home team. But Edward Norton, Columbia? Is that where he's from?
No, I thought he was PG.
Is it I don't know. I feel like it's like closer to... Hang on a second. Edward Norton was born in Boston.
What
That's it. We're never claiming him again. We're never, ever, ever. I don't even care where he grew up now. Now that I know
he was raised in Columbia. You're right. At least according to Wikipedia.
Look at
who is always
this
right.
Guy. What high school?
Why is it not listing it on his?
Okay, the internet has decided to stop working for me right in the middle. I always love that when I need it. Like in the moment where I want to look something up, and the internet's just like, nah, I'm good. Wild Lake. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We get to keep. Although who knows? He probably associated as much with D.C. as he did with Baltimore, but I don't care. That's that borderline area where we still get to claim it. That you never know what you're getting into. Parts of Howard County. Whenever I tell Griffin to start seeking out,
he's my Incredible Hulk.
I actually didn't hate that movie. I remember going to see it in theaters. It was fun. I always have this rule with Griffin. I'm like, whenever we're getting ready for the draft or something along those lines, where I'm like, all right, you need to reach out and see if we can't track down some of the locals. And like Griffin will tell me about somebody from Hyattsville. I'll be like, that's not a local.
Yeah, but they're good at football.
It doesn't matter. They're not local.
But good at football trumps out most everything.
And I've always said, like, it's Baltimore, Baltimore County, Harford County, Carroll County, local definitively. Anne Arundel County and Howard County, we're going to claim, but it could go either way. You run into quite a few where you just never know which side they're going on, but we'll still claim them. We'll claim in Howard County and Anne Arundel County, but you just never know what it is that you're getting once you get south of the city. Like, you just have no idea where someone's associations are, but we still claim them. But it's that central Maryland area that we're willing to claim, not we don't go MoCo or certainly not PG, unless it's advantageous for us, like with Francis Tiafoe, where I just wanted there to be. But even then, whenever somebody tries to put, well, should we include him in best of? I'm like, no, not a local athlete. Love him. That's my guy. Not a local athlete. Speaking of tennis, it was a hell of a match this morning. Madison Keys, stunning Iga Swiatek.
I thought you said Iga was unbeatable.
She was looking unbeatable. I think maybe a little bit of the weight of having never won the Australian Open started to get to her. I watched a good bit of the third set. She looked comfortable early on, and then Madison Keys wins the second set.
So you're comparing Iga to Lamar? Is that what you're?
Maybe. Although Iga's won 4 slams. Little bit
Yeah,
different.
but he's won. How many division titles has he won?
Right, right. But again,
equal.
The Australian Open isn't more significant than the others. This is not the one. She's just hard courts have been the one place where she's vulnerable. Anyway, I say all this to say Madison Keys facing match point, down match point at 6-5 in the third set, fights it off, gets the break, gets into the tiebreaker, falls behind in the tiebreaker, rallies to win 10-8. Hell of a finish. Madison Keys will now face Aryna Sabalenka, and Aryna Sabalenka will be a significant favorite in the Australian Open women's final. The men's semifinals tonight and overnight tonight. Real bummer. I just the way it works out, because Djokovic, Zverev, because those guys played 3 days ago, that has to be the first one tonight, which is great news for I say that Ben Shelton, the only American, is playing in the second one. But that's the more anticipated of the two semifinals. So that'll be the one that's on at 10:30 that people in this country could watch, whereas the 3:30 a.m. match will be the Ben Shelton Jannik Sinner match. And I'm guessing that in Australia they would have preferred to have had those two flip-flop, but such is life. That's the way it works. All right, coming up on the show in just a few minutes, our friend Joe Miller is going to join us as we do continue this week to celebrate the life of Pete Medhurst, Joe being Pete's best friend and broadcast partner at Navy. We're going to reflect a little bit more with Joe Miller. Also, Ken Zalis will join us. We'll make our championship week picks. Big week. Big week. As I fought back in. I've tied it back up at the bottom of the table with John Proctor. Just 3 games left to pick. Are we picking them differently? I don't know. If we pick them the same, then we'll go into the final game of the year tied. We'll see how this all plays out. And, of course,
we'll catch up with Cordell Woodland in the second hour.
Cordell Woodland's going to join us. I'd also think we're going to do season-long pats and slaps today.
Okay.
I think we'll try to do that before we get out of here today. Season-long pats and slaps. I was like, can we stretch that out until Monday to keep it on Monday? And I'm like, the season will be over by 8 days at that point. I don't really feel like that. So I think we'll try to get into that today as well. So all that coming up on the program today. We went over basically anything from the Ravens end of season press conference yesterday. That we'll talk about it with Cordell. Not a lot to me, as I told you guys yesterday, and I was trying to read over what every other, all of the other, the beat writers thought. It's always interesting. Here's what they said. Now we'll try to figure out what actually mattered. And that's just the reality of covering these
all
types
of it,
things. No, certainly not all of it. Again, by not getting, if you want to read into what they said about Mark Andrews being a part of the future, you can. But I think what you really read in is they would like that to be the case. It's much easier for them to be dismissive of Brandon Stevens. Like, look, dude, it ain't happening. We're not doing it. Whereas what they might know about Mark Andrews is that the reality is it's going to be difficult. They might know that. But if they think there's a world where they can work to a number with Mark Andrews where it makes sense and where they can also extend Isaiah Likely, then what they don't want to do is say, well, the most likely scenario is they're not going to say something like that. So could it mean something that they said Mark Andrews is a part of the future? Absolutely it could mean something. It's also possible that they know the reality, that they know it's not likely. It's also possible that they don't know yet, that they just don't know really what the reality is going to be. And they got to figure that out to kind of make these decisions in the next 2 months. They got to get a grasp of that. We'll find out. That's all I can keep saying. We'll find out. What did my gut tell me? I don't know. I had somebody ask me that yesterday. Said, you have to make a bet right now. Is Mark Andrews on this team next year? And my answer would probably be yes. But I'd be basing that on just the Ravens' inclination as a franchise to keep their guys around. I think this is one of the more interesting things that they've dealt with. It was easier for me to say, you're not going to pay both inside linebackers. Like, the moment they paid Roquan Smith, I think we all kind of had they're not paying Patrick Queen too. As a franchise, you're not paying 2 inside linebackers. It's just not a plausible way to put together a complete roster. I don't know if the same thing can be said at tight end. The parallel is the Ravens value the position perhaps even more than other franchises do. It's the way they've treated inside linebacker over the years, as maybe the position on the whole has been devalued. The Ravens have valued tight end from moment one in this franchise. Look at who was running it. They have valued it as much, if not more, than any other franchise in football. So I can't be dismissive of the idea that the Ravens would be willing to consider paying out more money to keep 2 tight ends, or that in their mind they're already looking at a way that they're using one, if not both of them, more frequently on the outside as a wide receiver. I can't be dismissive of that. But is it? The flip side is that the best way to go about doing business? The Ravens aren't going to be in the T. Higgins market. Like the dumbest of the dumb, and I'm trying to be nice about this, because I get that there are people that would say, why is the idea of going after T. Higgins dumb? Well, one, we don't even know if T. Higgins is actually going to be available. But 2, the big picture, the Ravens have to figure out Ronnie Stanley first. That's the first thing they have to do. You're just going to get to a place where there's not going to be the money for them to be involved in big ticket items in free agency. And to say, well, last year they got Derrick Henry. Yes, because Derrick Henry ended up not being a big ticket item. That's the reality. If running backs were getting the type of money that wide receivers were getting, then the Ravens wouldn't have been in the Derrick Henry market a year ago. They were in the Derrick Henry market because the running back position was deflated. Worked out obviously quite well for them, worked out very well for the Eagles, worked out for the most part for the Packers. for the most part, for the Vikings. Texans. I mean, everybody that got into the market, it worked out pretty well for them. Did anybody acquire a running back last offseason that it didn't work out for?
Devin Singletary in the Giants.
Yeah, but
well, that was Joe Shane's guy. So
it's so bizarre.
Fortunately, they stumbled into Tyrone Tracy.
They did. Looks like a football player. Any of the real running backs that were acquired. In fact, like the worst running back, the worst situation for a running back that's been acquired in recent years was the 49ers acquiring Christian McCaffrey, which is just, you feel bad for him, you feel bad for them, but it's what it is. Anyway, the moral of the story, again, being they could not have swam in those waters if the market for a running back was what the market for a receiver is. And it's the same thing at the edge. Like, we all have these pipe dreams of, well, they could trade for Max Crosby, they could trade for Myles Garrett. It's just not happening. It's not. Which doesn't mean that there couldn't be another edge rusher that could be in play. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be a trade. I don't know. But the idea that they are swimming in the deepest waters at any of these positions, primary positions, outside of having to pay significant money to keep Ronnie Stanley is crazy. So if you're moving on from Mark Andrews, and again, I understand the concept of you feel like you have to pay Isaiah Likely, he's going to cost you a good bit. Can you really make it work to keep both? I understand that concept. But if the reason why you think it's the right thing to do is because I want them to instead get after T. Higgins, you need to recalibrate. They're not getting after T. Higgins. That's just not reality. If T. Higgins does indeed end up hitting the free agent market, then I think we know it's going to be, what are the three teams? The Jaguars, the Patriots, or the Commanders? Those are the three teams with all the money?
With the most cap space.
That's where because they can. And I think, certainly the Commanders could still use a second receiver. The Patriots could use anything. I guess you could say that the Jaguars receiver's not their primary need. Brian Thomas is a star. God, that guy's a rock star. They still I don't know what Christian Kirk's situation is, but they got Gabe Davis. You could argue that it's not their primary need, but they would have the money and it would make sense for them. But yeah, I'm not reading too much into them saying we believe that Mark Andrews has a future, or he's a part of the future here in Baltimore. I think they want that, genuinely. That's what they want. And again, if you ask me, is it likely, I'll assume they're going to do everything in their power to keep it that way. But if they do get to a point where they go approach Isaiah Likely, and Isaiah Likely says, you got to pay me top of the market tight end money because that's what I know I'm going to get after next season as a free agent, then it does become an awkward situation. Do they just put it off and say, all right, well, we'll try to work something out with Mark Andrews right now, and then we'll deal with this again next year? It becomes more complicated. It does. All right. This week we've been celebrating here on GCR the life of our friend Pete Medhurst, and this one's going to be tough. As the only times I've actually had a conversation with our next guest were because of Pete Medhurst, and I know Pete would always say that I've got the coolest job because I get to travel the country with my best friend. Calling football games. And that best friend, who's Pete's broadcast partner at Navy, and you heard them together on the radio over the years, Pete and Joe, and doing the college football podcast. We welcome in this morning to GCR, Joe Miller, who's with us now here on the program. Joe, it's Glenn. I can only imagine how tough this week has been for you. I really appreciate you taking the time for us this morning, man.
No problem. I think it's also, it's part of celebrating Pete too. So it's been tough. It's been this whole thing has been a wild range of emotions for me a lot of times, but I've always been in life, like, even when I was a little kid, like, I don't know why, it's always been about, like, the journey for me and trying to celebrate things and trying to think big picture. And that's what I've kind of been trying to do as best as possible. But, look, when I see videos and I see stuff like last night we were doing, a basketball game, and, he's worked with, and I've known Mike Geary, former basketball player at Navy, for a long time too, but Pete and him are really close as well. And just going through some of that last night and just going through the pictures and the moment of silence last night, it kind of just all hit me. It's been difficult, but these last couple months have been difficult. I think, like I said, I'm trying to celebrate things and trying to look from that perspective and trying to go from that perspective and do my best, I guess.
I appreciate that, Joe. And I can't imagine it's easy, but I really appreciate it. Joe, for people that don't know, like, your personal relationship with Pete, beyond the fact that you were broadcast partners, can you give everybody the background on your all's friendship?
Yeah. We went to the same high school, but at different times. I'm roughly, I think, 9 or 10 years younger than Pete, depending on what month it is. But anyway, and it's kind of ironic because when I was a little kid, Pete graduated with my oldest sister. They were in the same class, and I first heard his name when I was a little kid because she was dating a guy at the time, and as I was a little kid, 8, 9 years old, whatever I was, and I was obsessed with sports, and would write stats down, and I had a notebook that I would write all this stuff down, and I was big into baseball cards, and I would put my own lineups in, and I would do my the typical stuff you did when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, and he would make fun of me like, hey, what do you think? You're the next Pete Medhurst or something like that? Like, 'cause I guess, obviously he knew Pete. I didn't really know. I knew the name at that point. And then, like, fast forward, 10, 11 years later, I had started doing some broadcasting out of high school, I went to broadcasting school, Broadcasting Institute of Maryland. And I had started doing, like, I was hired as, like, a production assistant for a local cable company. And then they were doing high school sports, and the guy that was doing high school sports left to go to his wedding so he left for his wedding and his honeymoon. So I stepped in, and, I was 19 years old. I was a year out of high school at that point. And I started doing some of the games for him. He got back and he said, hey, you're doing a really good job. Why don't you do the rest of the games? So I started doing high school basketball. We did a game of the week, football, and then basketball, and then lacrosse. And then, like, a little bit after that, Pat O'Malley, who just recently passed away, longtime Baltimore Sun writer, he wrote an article about me in the Sun. Here's this 19-year-old kid just out of high school doing these high school games, and he's doing a great job or whatever like that. And, it said went to Southern High School and all that good stuff. And then subsequently, like, I don't know, maybe a couple months later, I used to, big TV star as I was when I was 19 years old, I would work at my dad's gas station. My dad owned a gas station in Southern Anne Arundel County, and I would work there on the weekends. I was in college. I would come home on the weekends, and then he showed up there one day and introduced himself to me. And I knew the name, and I knew he had done some stuff on radio, like because you listen to everything when I was a kid. I knew he was on WTEM in DC doing updates and stuff like that. So I knew the name, and I knew he was doing some things. And I think he had recently moved back to the area. He came in, he just introduced himself to me. And I think, ironically, the first kind of few times we met, he was kind of asking me, like, hey, is there any games that you aren't doing, like, in the next couple of weeks, or months? Like, hey, if you need somebody, I'm available. So that's kind of how we first got to know each other. Then a little bit later, and this was kind of typical Pete because, Pete didn't necessarily plan ahead. He's kind of a spur of the moment, didn't sweat the details kind of guy. And he came in one Saturday and he said, hey, I'm doing a radio show tonight on WNAD in Annapolis. Do you want to do the show with me? And I was like literally, like, this would be like 4 hours later. I was like, well, I get out of here at like 3:00. What time does it start? And that's how we started. Like, and we did this sports show in Annapolis. I'm sure, Glenn, maybe 5 people listened. Brian Powell was one of them.
No doubt.
And
no
maybe
doubt.
maybe 2 other people listened. And we did this radio show. I was 20 years old, whatever I was. We did this radio show. I remember the first couple of shows, like we had like John Feinstein on and Burt Sugar, who would come on any show possible.
No doubt.
Rest
the
in
best.
peace, Burt Sugar. And we would do this crazy, stupid show. And, I grew up, loving sports, loving radio, as most people that get into our business do. I mean, I was a huge fan of Don and Mike growing up in the D.C. area. That was my, I'm obsessed about that show. And, that was kind of my, like, what I thought radio would be. So we would do crazy stuff, like, because I was 20 years old and didn't know what I was doing. Some of those tapes still exist. I hope, they don't see the light of day because we kind of did some stupid stuff. And that's kind of how it started between him and I. The Navy stuff, he had started doing some of the basketball games at Navy at that point. But, back then it was just radio. We weren't doing, like, the ESPN Plus game. So there wasn't a lot of stuff to do back then. It was radio or nothing else. So, Bob Stosey, who's now the Patriots voice, he was doing most of the games. Pete would fill in on some of the men's games. And then Bob would do minor league baseball in the spring. Pete would do more. But occasionally, I would fill in a game or 2 here and there. And that's kind of how I started with Navy doing stuff. But, again, there wasn't a lot of stuff. And then, started doing the pregame show with him at Navy in 2001. We had a local pregame show that went on before the network. So that's when I first started doing Navy stuff, was in 2001 with him. I was still finishing up at Towson at that point. And then, from then, it's just one of those things, you start to do stuff here and there with him. And then, stuff pops up here, stuff pops up there. And, from that perspective, that's kind of how it started. But yeah, I mean, we had that local connection because we're both from South Anne Arundel County and we both went to Southern High School. But in reality, like I said, he's probably been part of my life for my entire professional life. Just, as somebody that was helping me along the way, as you know,
yep.
Like, you just need to be introduced to people. There wasn't as many opportunities, out there as there was, but, Pete certainly helped me get, my first kind of real broadcasting, like doing Johns Hopkins on the radio week in and week out, sort of doing that in 2004. He certainly helped me do that because they were looking for somebody. And, Pete was like, well, I know this person that knows lacrosse and he can do it. And then I showed up and they're like, yeah, go ahead, go do it. And there wasn't really a tryout period or anything like that. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do the best I can. And so we did, honestly, as you probably know, Glenn, we basically did everything, from doing play-by-play together, whether it's different sports or, doing the talk show thing. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. And, it started out small, but, eventually it ends up in doing games together on the radio side.
Joe, a couple of things that stand out in what you just said. The first that jumps out and that you know how this business works. There's a lot of people in this business that are like terrified of helping you because
sure. Yeah.
you might take their opportunities. Like I
doubt.
don't want to give you this chance because what if then they hire you and not me? And Pete,
sure.
And part of it, look, my God, he was just really good. He didn't have to worry about losing any of his
sure.
gigs. He should have been doing bigger ones. But what you just talk about, like how much he would go out of his way to give someone, you, me, anyone, more opportunities, never thinking about, well, could that be the person that takes my, like he didn't have that bone in his body. His bone was, I think this person's good, and I think that they should be working hard, and I could sense that there was a little bit of a reflection. Like he wanted it to be like a meritocracy. Like if you're good at this, you should be working the gigs that you should be working.
Yeah, you're right, Glenn. There's a lot of people that always like, oh, we'll help you do that, but there's always this sideways look about like, hey, but you're not touching this.
Right.
You can do that, but you ain't coming over here to do this. And Pete didn't have that at all. And there certainly was, and and this is the thing that also I think that he saw that I didn't necessarily see in the beginning. Like, he saw a path. Like, when you get into this, like, especially back then 20 years ago, when there's not that many opportunities and, you're maybe, especially in this area. I mean, the first job I ever got, honestly, was on my own, and then I kind of got fired from it like a day later because they found out I was 18 years old. They didn't know I was that young. I got a minor league baseball gig, and like 2 days later, I filled out the paperwork for it, and they were like, "We can't hire an 18-year-old." And I was like, "Well, you didn't ask me what my age was."
Right.
But anyway, but Pete also saw, like, there's a path here of how you get to this spot. And I would say that he helped me along that path when I didn't even realize what the path was. Like, here, this is what you do here. This is the next step. I remember, just an innocuous thing, what seemed like to me, because when Navy expanded to put him on the sideline, they were going to do it initially just for home games, I think. And then he started doing some games with HDNet, which was like one of the first HD, they were doing Navy games. And he said, "Oh man," he was excited that he was going to get this opportunity. But he also said, "Hey, you know what you're going to be able to do now?" He's like, "You can do internal PA at the football game." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do internal PA." But from his perspective, it was like, "Hey, this will get you your foot in the door. This will get you a paycheck from Navy. You'll get on their books, and then eventually this is going to lead to other things." And I didn't see it like that when I was 23 or 24 years old. I just feel like, okay, yeah, I'll say, run of 8 yards, tackled by so-and-so, and that, that was it. But for me, created that path. Now, you're going to have to do the work your own, and you're going to have to get there on your own. But he created that path when I didn't even really realize what that path was, because I'm just trying to find my way and just trying to figure all this stuff out. And I look back on that now, and I'm very grateful for it. I didn't really realize what was going on at the time. But going back to your original point, yes, there's not a lot of people that are going to do that for you in this industry. And, that's another reason I'm so thankful for those opportunities.
Joe Miller is with us here on GCR as we're remembering the life of the great Pete Medhurst. Joe, traveling, and from the moment that you ended up on the broadcast together, at first you doing sidelines and then ultimately in the booth together, can you try to explain what that was like for you to be able to go on the road with Pete and have those experiences together, work a program that was recording historic win after historic win and memorable moment after memorable moment? Can you try to explain what that was like for you, not just as a broadcaster, but as a person?
Sure. I think the best way to kind of put it into context is you hear when athletes retire, they'll go, "Well, yeah, the games are great, but what I remember most is the camaraderie in the locker room.
Yeah.
What I remember most is the trips and the flights and all that stuff." And that's kind of where I would put this at too. Like, yeah, the games, those moments were fantastic, but it was Friday night dinners where we would get together. It was traveling. It was, all those different memories that I would say are the things that carry with me as well. I mean, we spent so much time together in cars and traveling and in different aspects that's the stuff that, yeah, the games, I'll remember the games and I'll remember everything from those games. But I will remember those moments of those meals. And, Pete was a lot of times for us getting together, Pete is the kind of guy that is the butt of the joke sometimes. It's just not his manner to sort of shoot back. So we would be going back and forth between all of us, and Pete would never shoot back. And we would have these, and that's what made things so funny sometimes, is that he was the perfect sort of person to work off of from that perspective. So all those moments and all those times, like I remember we played at San Jose State. It's this crazy game, 6 overtime game. Keenan Reynolds scores like 7 or 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And we're like in the third quarter and we find out, well, we're not going to, it's like fourth quarter, late fourth quarter, long game, going into overtime. And we find out, behind the scenes that we're going to have to now go to San Francisco from San Jose because the airport in San Jose closes at a certain time. and we're going to have to drive to a different, and we're going to have to land at a different airport, and we've got to figure out how we're going to get back to BWI. And all this is going on while this crazy game is going on. And it's behind the scenes stuff, but it's always memorable to me, because we are supposed to be on the air in DC at 10 a.m. Doing a shift from 10 to 2 on 106.7, and we're going to now land in Dulles at 8 o'clock, and we got to get to BWI to get our cars,
and then back to
get back to DC to do this radio show while this is all going on. There's no sleep involved in any of this. At the time, my daughter, I think, was 2 years old. So I'm thinking, well, I'll get home at 2 o'clock, and my wife has to go to work at 4 o'clock or whatever like that. And it's just all that stuff to me, people don't understand. But that's the stuff that I will always remember doing that show. We're dead tired. I don't know what we're talking about, the Capitals or whatever we're talking about, or, in football and the Redskins and all this good stuff. And it's just, that's the kind of stuff that I will always remember, just those moments and those memories of being around all of us together. I mean, a very close-knit group for us at Navy with Scott Strassmeyer and Chris, and his wife Kristen and Stacy and Keith Mills now, and all of us together. And, it's those are, like I said, when you hear players talk about those are the things you remember. Honestly, you do remember the games, but it's all those moments, the looks we would give each other when something crazy happened, or the fist bump when I would say you nailed it, or you got that call right, or, he would say, man, I really appreciate you laying out for that one, or whatever it was. Those moments, yes, they're awesome, and they will be a part of, his legacy and everything that goes along with it. But it's really a lot of times the time we spent together outside of that, and all lacrosse season, all the trips we would take, and those are the stuff that like I said, I'm a big enjoy the moment. I kind of recognize it in the moment that those are the things that you're always going to remember, and I feel like those are the things that are going to stick with me the most.
What did you learn most from him? Joe, I tell him this every time, and I don't know that he believed me. He would come work some D3 lacrosse game with me that he never had to do.
Yeah.
Or we do it
exactly.
We do
and
it.
I would go, Pete, why are you doing that?
And I it would always and Joe, he would always ask me for more. He would always. It's just so funny you talking about him asking for high school games. I try to explain to people. I'd be scrambling. I would text him and say, "Hey, do you know somebody that would be willing to do this game?" And he'd just be like, "Well, I'll just come do it." It's that was just who he was. But we do a high school game, and I would learn something from him every time I worked with him. There'd be something else that I would pick up from him. What, as a broadcaster, do you find yourself saying "Oh, I know I do that because of Pete"?
Well, I think that the one thing that I took more away from Pete than anything is calm under pressure. That to me was his best trait. Early in my career, you would do something and somebody would throw something at you, and it would be, hey, we're going to do this interview now, but oh no, we're going to switch it at the last second, and all that stuff would always frazzle me to some extent. And from Pete's perspective, nothing ever frazzled him. I saw him nervous twice in his life. I saw the only time I ever saw him panic a little bit. We were working in Baltimore at 105.7, and the fire alarm went off, and he actually kind of the first time I ever saw him panic. And I'm like, Pete, there's windows all around us. You can see down the hall. There's no fire coming. And it was the only time I ever remember in his life that he actually panicked in front of me. But his calm under pressure was the thing that I think separated him from most people. I've never met anybody that, people will walk in and say, hey, do this, and do that. And he was able to do it flawlessly. The other thing that I think I took from him more or less was that, look, Pete was not a sweat the details. Like I mentioned, he was not a sweat the details kind of guy. I'm a sweat the details. In any good relationship, you need things that are similar. You need common interests, but you also need to be different. In any good relationship, you need people to have different personality traits. And Pete was not a sweat the details kind of guy, and I was a sweat the details kind of guy. So I learned how to relax a little bit more around Pete. Then I think that was early in my career. I just tried to be too tried to rise to the moment too many times and just like calm down, relax, and sort of understand like the bigger picture here and not get too carried away with things. And those are the things. And certainly, I mean, there's the little things too that you pick up. I mean, I think, and I'm not trying to, when we started doing lacrosse, there really wasn't a lot of lacrosse being done out there. I know Scott and Keith had started doing it at Channel 2. There was some stuff on ESPN. And, obviously Leaf and Quinn had done it in years past. But I think what we actually kind of talked about things when he started doing lacrosse full time and I started doing it at Hopkins about different ways to do things. And I honestly do believe, like, you hear some of that stuff now, 20 years later, that wasn't really being said and kind of created a little bit of a lacrosse play-by-play manual, if you will, because it just wasn't out there. There's some stuff that I know that we talked about trying to do and different things that you hear people say now that I don't think you necessarily heard maybe 20 years ago. So I'm proud of that, because, that sport was obviously a big part of what we did early on in our careers. And I'm glad to see sort of the rise and the different people doing things. And, it was tough to find 20 years ago 5 people that did lacrosse play-by-play. And now you see it all over the place. So I think there's certainly that kind of stuff too, that we kind of built together too. And I'm proud of that as well.
I got to share this because it's funny. I saw you share what the Junkies had said yesterday, and I went back and listened, and it was beautiful. But
yeah,
and those guys, and they've always been great to me too. Like talking about how meticulously Pete would prep, and I know that at times that was true, right? Like at times, there's no doubt. But I also know there were a lot of times where that was not true, and that Pete would show up and just say, "Hand me a roster." And no one would have known the difference because he filled brilliantly. He would just tell you about things that he knew about that were somewhat adjacent to the topic effortlessly. I'd never seen anything like it where, and you know how this is working some of these lower, that you just don't get a ton of information. There's not a ton of information out there to get. And he would show up and there would be no panic, to your point. There would be no, well, we've got nothing to talk about. He would just find something else, like, okay, this player is from this area. Well, let me tell you about the person that I know that's from this area.
Sure. Yeah.
And it would sound so good and so informed that you would think that he had spent a week working on it, when the truth is he had nothing. That was his encyclopedic knowledge that allowed him to fill a broadcast.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I would get on him every now and then, like, hey, this is this or this. And I would try to, again, part of a good relationship, prep things for some things, because I knew, look, he was doing so many different things. There's only so many hours in the day
that you
can do this stuff. But he had an unbelievable ability to recall things. Now, I used to joke with him. It's funny because somebody asked me in an interview the other day, what was Pete like outside of sports? And I was like, there really wasn't a Pete outside of sports,
Right.
I mean, I remember talking to him about different podcasts, like, hey, do you listen to anything else? And he's like, no, I just, go from sports station to sports station. And so it was honestly all he, obviously outside his family and stuff like that, but that was what his focus was. And he had, we would joke about him doing volleyball, because we would say, when is the Karch Karai reference coming? Because he would have he would know 3 volleyball players that had played volleyball at some point in their lives, and Karch Karai was the most famous one. And he'd be like, she stung that ball like Karch Karai, and it'd be like, and it's like, so he would find these sort of little things about different sports that he would concentrate on, because look, if you're going to, and that's part of the reason why I would sometimes, Pete, you're doing hockey, there's no way they give you any information going into that. I mean, I've done a lot of these things too, and you're not. I remember the first time I did a college lacrosse game, on TV, it was Division III, and I was trying to super over prepare and all this stuff, and then you get into a game, and then you realize when you start doing this that most of the time you're not going to use any of this, and don't kill yourself but you want to be prepared. But, Pete, the thing about Pete was that he could do anything on, like, if you asked him, like, if you showed up and he had the time and you said, hey, I'll give you, whatever to do this, youth hockey game, he would do it, and he would do it with a smile. I mean, he back in the day, he like DJ'd weddings and stuff like that. I mean, he did a little bit of everything, and I love what the Junkies tribute for him, because it put him in a light where Pete loved to laugh. He loved to be the butt of jokes. I really do believe that sometimes. I mean, one of the things that is also important is, like, in a good relationship, he was an open book. He would talk about things to you about his family, and it was we would joke with him all the time about how he never was his wife would give him like an allowance, like, and it on Thursday or Friday, he would, like, Pete loved, like, later, the last 5 or 6 years with the McDonald's app, and you got free fries, or if Obi scored 3 goals, you got free chicken, whatever it was. He loved that stuff because he didn't have to spend money on stuff. And it wasn't that, he didn't have it. It was always this. I remember driving up to Baltimore with him all the time when we would fill in, we would do nights, we would do literally everything. And if it was later in the week, I would be like, Pete, you don't have enough gas to get to Baltimore. Like, can I? He'd be like, oh, don't worry, it's gonna get there. And the light would be on. We'd be in like Annapolis with like 30 more miles. He's like, oh, I've done this before. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And I would just be, like I said, I'm the more atypical, like, come on, man. I will pay for gas. Like, stop. Like, I don't want to run out of gas on 695 right now on the side of the road when we have to do a show in like 45 minutes. But we always made it. We always got there. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. And that, to me, is what I've tried to honestly more incorporate in my life, because I was always the guy that was like, oh, come on, we got to do this or we got to do that. Those, like I said earlier, those are the memories that, all the broadcasting stuff was fantastic and all that great stuff, but those are the things that I'll never forget.
I was trying, when you were talking about, and the Junkies were talking about, like, it was just sports. I was like, dude, it was always sports, his family, the business. We talk a lot about the business, obviously. And
he loved it. He loved the behind the scenes stuff.
And I'm pretty sure the only other thing we ever talked about was, like, what the new seasonal menu was at Dunkin'. Like, that was the only other thing I could ever, like, he'd be like, hey, have you tried this yet? That was it.
Pete loved his fast food.
Yeah.
He loved Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep.
He loved Panda Express. Like, I told him one time, like, he would always tell me, like, he'd get the chicken lo mein, and I'd be like, Pete, how do you eat the chicken lo mein while driving? He's like, oh, I do it all the time. It's no big deal. I'm driving and I'm eating. And then one time I'm like, going through Panda Express. I'm like, okay, let me see if I can do a Pete Medhurst and drive my car while I eat orange chicken lo mein. And I almost, like, ran off the side of the road. And he'd be like, oh, it's no big deal. And it was like, he loved his fast food. He loved his fish fillets from McDonald's. He loved his 2 chocolate donuts from Dunkin' Donuts. Like, honestly, Glenn, I mean, he was a simple but complex person.
Right.
Like, it was, the things that made him the happiest were, like, he always talked about his family, obviously, and doing games. That's when he was the happiest on the air. I mean, look, this year was tough. He was dealing with some things that we didn't know what was going on. And the Notre Dame game is the last game he did. And he was struggling that day off the field, like, getting there. And we were all concerned that day, like, what's going on? But that day on the air, like, his last broadcast, the game didn't go our way that day. But during the broadcast, I mean, Glenn, he was as happy as he could be. And that's what, like, for Pete, being on the air was what gave him energy, life. Like, just, it didn't matter where.
Nope.
It didn't matter if 2 people were listening.
Yep.
It did not matter. Somebody out there was listening, and that's what gave him his energy. And I sometimes, look, I envy that. There's times where I'm like, man,
why am I doing this? Yeah.
This is tough. This isn't easy, And he was always, as soon as that light went on, it was a different person. and he was a great person off the mic. There's no doubt about that. But that extra little kick that he always had was what got you over the finish line a lot of times. And those last couple of weeks where he was dealing with some pain and we didn't know what was going on and we were going back and forth, when we got on the air, he changed into a different person. It was like none of these issues, existed. And that's his essence too, that it was on the air. That's all he ever wanted to do. There wasn't anything else he wanted to do. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be on the air. And I as somebody who, does it, and respects that job, that's what people in this broadcasting world see. That's why you saw everybody, because it's not a bad life by any stretch of the imagination, but the people that do it understand like the downside of these things. Like when you're having a bad day and then you have to get on the air and be super chippy and you have to turn that. That's why these broadcasters that know what that's like. That's why their reaction. That's why the Junkies have the reaction that they have. That's why you have the reaction that you have. That's why all these, like Charlie Slows has the reaction that he has, and all these people and Johnny Holland, and all these people that have reached out. That's why they reached out and put those kind words out there, because they knew and they understand, like, sometimes you're having a bad day. And when if he was having a bad day, as soon as that mic came on, he was a different person and he was ready. And that, to me, is a good attribute as anything out there. Is the people that, Pete probably would say, oh, they don't listen to what I do, or they don't know what that's the acclaim and the recognition that is so impressive to me, because they understand that and they understood what he was all about. And that, to me, is really special.
Joe, I can't thank you enough for spending this time, and I promise that our next conversation, it'll just be about sports and it'll just be about Navy and what you guys are doing.
Look, I've told you before, like you've had Pete on here for and you've never had me on here before. So
I know.
I
feel like but you know what, man? We're gonna do that. By the way, also, what's funny too? Pete, I had Pete on like once a month, and he would still yell at me that I didn't have him on more frequently. Like he just like I would literally do it like a once a month where he'd come on for an hour, and then he'd be like, "You ready to have me on again?" Like, Pete, I have you on as much as anybody. Joe, I really appreciate you, man. And I look forward.
No problem.
I look
Glenn,
forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, I appreciate all you've done and said about Pete. It really does mean a lot. Like I said before, it's really meant a lot to his wife and his kids to see the response. And I said this the first week when I went on the air, the first game without him. That really has meant a lot to his family. And I appreciate everybody that's reached out to, social media, kind word, anything out there, because, his family has been incredibly appreciative of all that. So I just want everybody to know that it's being heard and it's being felt, and it's very important to them.
Joe, thank you, buddy. We'll talk real soon, all right?
All right. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it, man. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Joe Miller, Navy Athletics broadcaster and Pete's best friend and partner and longtime co-host. You tell me. I just wasn't going to cut that short, and I hope Ken understands. Yeah, boy. I can't tell you how special. I know some of you are like, why are you spending this much time? You guys, just that special of a human, deserves all of this and a lot more. Please continue to lift his family up with the GoFundMe. Just search Pete Medhurst GoFundMe. Again, they need it even more now than before. We'll come back in and talk to KZ. That's next. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry. Protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health. Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at DriveEasyMD.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here. Thanks again to Joe Miller. That was a special conversation. Appreciate him taking the time for us. And we're just spending the week celebrating Pete Medhurst, who is a friend of this show and a friend of everyone in our community. So we'll continue to do that. I think Chet Gladchuk, Navy Athletic Director, is going to join us tomorrow, and appreciate Joe doing that. All right. Today's show is also brought to you by County Sports Zone. CountySports.zone is the website. It's proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Everything you need to know about high school sports. Every team, every school, every sport, everywhere throughout the state, they've got you covered. Scores of every game, schedules, updates, news, rankings, poll, everything you need to know. They've got you covered. CountySports.zone, again, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. All right, we good?
Yes.
It is time to make some picks. Only 2 games to pick this week. Not a lot of drama at the top of the table, but all of a sudden, the bottom of the table, your boy has got some company. This man would need a miracle at the top of the table. He is Ken Zalis, and he's back with us now here on GCR. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's up? I just want to pick the opposite of James.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't.
Those are my picks. I don't care what he picks.
We don't allow for that, and you know that. We don't allow that to be a thing. You got to hope for the best. Try to get into the mind of a human being that you don't know. That is the advantage, like when it was me versus Kyle, is I kind of thought I knew.
And me and you.
Right, we kind of have a sense. Yes. But if with James, none of us, I don't know. I know James a little bit. None of us have any idea what he's going to do. So it's impossible for you to try to guess what his pick is.
I don't think he's real.
Oh, what a story that would be. Oh, my God.
I think it's a mysterious person.
Well, there were a couple weeks this week where we were worried that he wasn't real. Griffin had to track down. No one had to get more reminders mid-show this season than James Revere did about picks coming in. And I'm telling you, at the beginning of the year, when I put this out there that anybody could join the league if they wanted to, he was I did that with like 5 minutes left in the game. I was like, look, we're about to start. If somebody wants to get in, they can get in. And James reached out, not knowing what he was getting into. And then the first thing that he got back to me with was like, you didn't tell me. It was like, all of the smartest people in Baltimore sports media that I'm going up against, I've got no shot.
Obviously, that's what we
Wow.
are. Yeah.
So much for that.
Yeah, so much for that. All right, 2 games to pick this weekend, the 2 championship games. Unfortunately, the Baltimore Ravens not involved. It's just what it is.
What happened?
At the top of the table, playing for a little bit of cash, James Revere, first year in the league. What was it that crazy lady said about the Jaguars all those years ago? She was like, well, of course, they didn't want us to steal the show. That's the situation right now, James Revere. See if you can find that crazy. That it was the most psycho thing. Pull it up where people can hear it or see it.
I mean, I was gonna.
Well, okay, whatever you got to do. This was, I don't even remember what the story. It was like the day of the draft. Like some TV station in Jacksonville just like went out to do like man on the street types of interviews. Like, hey, what do you think about the Jaguars and the draft? And they found the single most deranged human being ever who clearly knew nothing about the Jacksonville Jaguars, but decided to do the interview anyway. Did you find it?
Yeah, let's go with yes.
Yeah. This is it's my favorite clip I think in local news history.
I want to make sure everyone can see it.
Very good. This is the setup. Now I can't pay off. This is the problem.
Yeah, no. See, you, I think this was on you, Glenn.
No. You can't pay it off.
I hope this is right. I mean, this has to be it.
Oh, God, now I'm nervous.
News for Jacks.
That sounds right.
Ready?
Go ahead.
As far as picks, they say they have the best draft in the entire NFL. Are you surprised to hear that?
Certainly not. The first year we took it to the limit. And I was in Miami with my new beach house. Well, it was a couple minutes from the beach.
It's been 20 years since then. We haven't been too strong in the last few years.
Oh, we've been strong. We're just playing by the rules. You can't have a newcomer come in and steal a show.
And she stares at the camera. And like all of it's nonsense. Like none of it means anything. It's my favorite clip ever. But that's what James Revere is doing. A newcomer coming in and stealing the show, as that's where he's at. 3-game lead with just 3 games to play. At the top of the table, playing for a little bit of cash. At the bottom of the table, the real issue here is it is a mega punishment. It is John Ross, because the season started in Brazil. Well, the second game was in Brazil. You got to sing a couple of Brazil-related songs, Copacabana and Rio. Get a Brazilian. On I really don't know how we're doing this. I've thought about that a lot. You also have to take 4 strikes from BJJ expert John Rollo. 4 strikes of his choosing. And as somehow that and all of that wasn't enough, you also have to consume this couscous paulista, which is a sardine fruitcake.
Yeah.
Now, I was in hell because I've been at the bottom of the table since like week 3.
Delicious.
And a couple of times it looked like maybe I was going to be able to make a move, but I haven't been able to sustain any of that. John Proctor, God bless him, has had a Ryan Chelian collapse at the end of the year. And by the way, as I said before, Ryan Chell, if he had a hair on his ass, would take some of this punishment for the disaster that has been the second half of his season. No human... It's impossible. He was winning by 1 million games. He's now under 500. But at the bottom of the table, John Proctor and I are tied going into championship weekend. And with that in mind, it's time to make our picks.
Let us start.
By the way, the first game that Ken and James pick similarly,
the contest is over.
You send James's money.
Okay.
That's the way it works. As soon as they pick a game the same way, it's over.
Come on, Casey. Pick opposite.
I'm trying. I tried last week. It didn't work.
Sorry. I brought it down because I had the...
Yeah, he picked all the games the exact same way last week.
Same.
Yeah, really hurt his chances.
All right, we'll go up I-95 to Philly and the Eagles. This is the 3 o'clock game on Fox. Our 6-point favorites against the Washington Commanders.
I mean, this is going to be how I go down. Unquestionably. But I can't turn my back on the Commanders after what they've done for me the last couple of weeks.
Go ahead, do it.
I'm not doing that.
Left hand up.
Stop it.
Who are we?
I'm not involved with any of that nonsense.
The Commanders.
But I can't. They have been too good to me the last couple of weeks, while John Proctor has been on the other side both of the last 2 weeks. So it's not just they've gotten me wins. They're the reason I'm back in this thing. I can't do it now. If I have to ride it to death. I have to. I have no choice. You got to dance with the girl that got you there. 6 points. Jalen Hurts maybe a bit banged up. I get it. The Eagles are the most complete team left. But the Commanders are the pick.
So I've done a lot of research into James' picks. I've gone through every single one of them.
Look at you.
And he's a closet Washington fan, and he believes in them.
Well, you say that. He picked Detroit last week.
Shut up.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I think he's jumping on the bandwagon, and they have everybody fooled. And he's going to take the Commanders and the points. So I'm going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to take the Eagles.
All right. Is the competition still alive?
You are taking the Eagles, Ken?
I am.
Unfortunately, the contest is over.
No!
I was trying to figure it out too, like where he'd go. I mean, he's been kind of steadfast on favorites almost all the way. Like I don't think it's like 100%, but like he has.
That's the reason why he's winning. Is he's just riding with favorites?
I think so.
He's just riding
I think
favorites.
so. I
Jeez.
think that might be why.
Well,
I mean, last week he went all favorites.
It might be a lesson to our.
He went 2-3 last week, but
lesson to the rest of the league.
Yeah, he's on.
Congratulations to James Revere.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
So. He has to come in person and click it up so we.
Yeah, so we know he's real. There's got to be a proof of life situation. It's true. He's not on Twitter, although Ken's not on Twitter anymore either. He is on Facebook, and I have actually met James in person because he He did kindly donate a good number of things to our Helping Up mission drives over the years. So, congratulations, James Revere,
great job,
champion
James.
of our picks league.
Yes.
Oh man. All right. Nobody really cares what anybody else picked, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean it is pretty. It's a fun matchup here. It went back in August when the trade went down. We all thought who's going to be the winner of this.
The
Jahan Dotson
deal.
in the
the
Washington Philly trade. We'll finally get our answer. Whoever wins this game will be the winner of the trade, and I think it's going to be the Eagles. So I'll go ahead and lay the 6 with the Eagles, despite how romantic everyone is about the Commanders.
Now, tell everybody else except for John Proctor. Save John Proctor for last.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I guess Paul Valley is still not.
Paul Valley's in it.
He's still not safe. Yeah, he's only 2 games clear.
All right. So Ken and I and James on Philly. Jeremy's on Philly. Joe Serpico, John Little Rock on Philly. And then on Washington it would be Andrew Stetka. It would be Kyle Ottenheimer, Ryan Shell, Glenn Clark, and Paul Valley.
Paul Valley is on Washington.
And Proctor
so Paul
is
Valley is. Oh, you got to do a better. You got to do a much better sales job here.
Okay.
We're trying to. I know you're new still. What, have you been here for 5 years? But you got to do a much better job of selling this on the radio, even though we're not on the radio.
John Proctor.
Yeah, could be on anybody.
He could be.
Yeah,
well, he's only 2 options.
Yeah.
He's on the Eagles.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
I mean, got high drama in one game. High drama. If we pick the other game differently, there's a chance that our Super Bowl picks are meaningless.
Wow, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, just keep that in mind.
Interesting.
Could be utterly and completely meaningless.
To Kansas City for the AFC Championship, 6:30. I guess what the Ravens game didn't really kick until like 6:45, but scheduled for 6:30 on CBS, and the Chiefs are 2-point favorites against the Buffalo Bills.
They're 2 points?
2 even.
Started at 1.5. I've said all week I'm going to pick the Chiefs, so I'm not going to turn my back on it either. I'm not here to play mind games. It's the Chiefs at home in the AFC Championship game. It's a better Chiefs team. I realize that the Bills beat the Chiefs, but this Chiefs team is actually better now than they were then. They got some more pieces back. They're still going to get all the calls. That's part of that's. You have to bake that into the cake. And the Bills, the emotions of last week. I don't know. I'm not picking again. I'm not picking against the Chiefs at home with my life on the line, especially with just 2 points. Chiefs.
My life is no longer on the line.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you pick.
So it really doesn't matter what I think. But I'm actually rooting for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl now because I despise the other 3 teams so much.
I despise them.
So I like everybody already hates the Chiefs. So just win a third one. Who the hell
right?
cares?
It doesn't really change any of the realities.
Right. It doesn't change
right?
anything. Like it's more fun for me to Buffalo never win a Super Bowl, and Philly. Philly and Washington, I've grown up hating my entire life, so why am I rooting for them now? Yeah, I like Barkley, I like Daniels, but I can't root for them, so I'm taking Kansas City.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not gonna start picking against the Chiefs today, so I will go ahead. They still have Patrick Mahomes, right?
To my understanding,
Okay.
they still have Patrick
Yeah,
Mahomes.
I'm gonna go ahead and take the Chiefs. All right, so Glenn is on the Chiefs.
Again, now you tell everybody that not
Okay.
involved. So everybody except Paul Valley and John Proctor.
On the Chiefs, myself, Ken Zalis, James is on the Chiefs. Jeremy is on the Chiefs. Joe Serpico on the Chiefs. John Proctor is going to withhold that one.
Don't say John Proctor.
I know. I'm going to withhold that one.
This is such a bad presentation.
You're terrible at this.
It's just such a bad
John in
presentation.
Little Rock.
Yeah.
He is going to Buffalo. He is on the Buffalo Bills,
Okay.
getting 2 points, as is Kyle Ottenheimer,
Okay.
as is Ryan Shell.
Well, that's great news.
Yeah.
If anything, the one thing you don't want to do is be in agreement with post-November Ryan Shell.
All right, the P's, Proctor and Paul.
So we start with Paul. Paul is teetering on being safe.
Yes, he is teetering on being safe, and so he picked the Commanders, and in this one he's going to keep the C theme going. He's taking the Chiefs.
So
here.
here's the deal. That means he's good.
That means he's good.
He's good because he picked the exact same way as I did,
Mm.
which means that no matter what, will still be 2 games back of Paul Valley going into next week, and would only have the ability to make 1 game up. So he might John Proctor might jump ahead, but both of us would have had to have jumped ahead.
Gotcha.
Paul Valley, congratulations! You have walked a tightrope this season, my friend, but you are safe.
All right, so then that means it leaves it up to Proctor, and he is on. You're on Kansas City, Glenn.
Yes.
John Proctor is on Kansas City as well.
Okay, so the big one this week is the NFC Championship game. That will determine. There will be meaning to the Super Bowl pick. There will be one way or the other. It's going to be relevant. One of us is going to be. Now, of course, it means it's going to be a push for sure, right? Like this is definitely going to be a 6-point Eagles win now, so we're still tied going into the Super Bowl. All right, that's the reality. That's what's going on into there. Well, KZ, I appreciate you being with us for game day all season.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, most of it
Yippee.
was. Most of it was Saturday night.
You know.
Or what happened to you on Sunday night? KZ didn't show up till like a half an hour into post game on Sunday night.
So there were 2 things. I was out, and I wanted to get into a place where I could actually do the post-game show.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I was not in a good headspace to start the show.
I get it.
And I wanted to get my thoughts a little bit under control because I didn't want to go to my knee-jerk reaction, which is this is why you need a new head coach because he can't win a big game anymore, and there's always something that he screws up, and he really didn't. I mean, there's just this is how he coaches now, and it is what it is. I did not appreciate did not enjoy the answers from the peanut gallery yesterday, but especially
about what? What do you want them to say?
I rather them say nothing than telling us, well, we've had this play in the bag all year. We thought at the most critical junction, the most critical game was a good time to use it.
What? It worked. It just. What are you mad at?
I'm not mad at anything. Again, I said what I said that night. It's like the play worked. He was open. Whether you want to give credit to the defensive play for knocking it down, whether you want to, like some people want to do, crush Lamar because he didn't put air under that one and just floated, whatever. I don't like the play call, whether it worked or not. And I said that I don't like going for 2 there, whether it worked or not. It's just a difference of opinion. And that's why I didn't want to get too worked up about it. I'm really not that worked up about it now. I did. The comment that got me is like, well, sure, yeah, we could have run the ball 4 straight times with Derrick Henry into a run blitz, but that wouldn't have worked. Really?
Yeah, okay. I mean,
that wouldn't have worked. Don't say that. Stop saying that.
Wait. I hear the argument. You give it a shot anyway, but for one, they're probably right, but two, it doesn't excuse what happened. Like
whether they're right or not, there was no bigger moment of this is why we got Derrick Henry in the Ravens' entire season. This is why we put together. And to not fire that bullet 3 times at least. You have this one in the bag. Good 4th down in the bag call. I wanted to see Henry 3 times up the middle. That's just me. And it made it worse for me when he said it and he goes, "Oh, well, we could have done." And it's like, "Shut up." Tired of you.
Jesus Christ. That's where it took him a couple days, but he's back.
I know,
There's our guy.
I know.
There's our guy.
But
he's back.
It's never changing. Like these are the things.
What do you? I just am so. What? How are you? If he walked out and said, "You know what? Yeah." In hindsight, we could have run it forward. What is that going to do for you? How are you going to?
Nothing.
That's why I don't understand why you care. Why do you care?
Because he's a terrible game day coach.
Oh, for God's sakes, get out of here. Get out of here.
He is. He doesn't know how to count still. How many years are we? 16 years?
He doesn't know how to count. What do you mean?
How do you count? If we kick the extra point here and they score a touchdown, it means they're up by 7. If they don't, then we have to go for 2 later.
Because obviously he knows the way the game is going to be played out is
he
that
does.
they're going to kick 2 field
He
goals.
has. It's amazing how his magic 8-ball works better than anybody else's. Maybe that's what he. Maybe that's what the headphones.
I was wondering.
Maybe that's what's in the headphones.
I was wondering where you've been.
Maybe he says to the person in the booth, "What did the magic 8-ball say when you shook it today?"
I was wondering where you've been, but it's good to see you again. It's good to see you again.
I do have a serious question, and you can text this to me later.
Yeah.
But I truly need to know if we're doing a draft show this year.
You need to know that now?
I do.
We don't have that answer yet.
Well, but we need to figure out that answer. Do you want to know why we need to figure out the answer?
Does somebody else ask you to do a show?
No.
Oh.
Because I'm not going to jump into the draft.
Oh, you don't want to bother. You don't want to do
the work. I'm not going
to
jump into the draft like I normally do for 7 rounds if we're not.
Would you do
if we are, I'm happy.
Is there an in between for you where you could do like some amount of work while we work on this?
No. I'm going to. I don't know. I'm going to know.
I don't know if you're.
Round.
I don't know if you're
I'm
new
going to know
here.
the first 2 rounds. I'm going to know the first 2 rounds.
All right.
If we're doing it, I am all in.
Ken, you're not new here.
When's Camp Scatterville going?
We don't exactly.
He's probably going somewhere in the 2nd round.
Yeah, wow. We don't typically work on that timeline around.
I would love for him to be picked 27.
Wow.
27?
I don't know.
That is bold. All right, we'll talk about it more in the coming weeks. Love you, buddy.
Got one more year of Henry.
I understand, but I just think they have other.
Then we're free.
They have other. Yeah, right. Get away from that guy. I think they have other pressing needs, pal. That's just where I'm at. All right.
Did you hear what they said about Brandon Stevens?
Yeah. Oh, it's by the way the only question they answered honestly yesterday was he gone. He is out of here. All right. I love you.
He's got a great personality. Is what they
really does. God, wishing him nothing but the best in his future endeavors.
That was brutal. That was the most brutal answer.
Because they don't ever answer anything honestly.
They always they never say anything bad about anybody.
They just subterfuge the entire time, and then they're just like, yeah, that one probably not going to work out.
He's a great practice player.
Probably not going to work out so much. All right, pal. Let's talk soon.
Take care, guys.
Love you, buddy.
Bye.
It's KZ with List for Picks. It does mean that our Super Bowl pick will matter. Again, no matter what. It will matter. I was wondering do you have the audio of what John Proctor's chanting at his house right now? Do you have?
No.
Oh, God. Radio professional.
I guess.
Radio professional. It's the only. One day. How many years have you been doing this?
Is you want this again?
They say they have the best draft
Why
in
would
the
John
entire
Proctor
NFL.
be chanting that?
I don't know.
Chanting that. Why would he be chanting that at his home? What would John Proctor be chanting?
He'd be hail to the.
Why would he be doing that?
Who did he pick? I forget.
Jesus Christ.
Is that what he's gonna be chanting? Oh, fly eagle. Oh, I see. Hold on. Sit tight. Everybody sit tight.
Hell.
It's coming.
Let me hear you all say ELGLES Eagles! Let's go, Birds! Let me hear you.
Thanks, John. There you go. That's what he'd be chanting, correct?
Yes! Yes, of course. That would be what he'd be chanting at home.
Well, at least I got it, though.
On the 8th bounce.
I mean,
on the 8th bounce.
I know how to spell, so that's why I didn't think of it
that's
first.
what the problem was?
Yeah.
God damn it. Hey, I'm promising you guys, one of these days, and he just threw the phone.
I did.
He's supposed to be calling Cordell right now. He has to dive under the table to find the phone. One of these days, we're going to work the kinks out. That one, again, some things I'll put on me. Some things flying by the seat of my pants. Like that Jaguars thing just came up when I was reminded of stealing the show. I can't expect him to be prepared for that. Although I don't know how he missed it. It's one of my favorite internet clips of all time. I can't expect him to be prepared for that. But we were just doing this one yesterday. It's fresh of mind. John Proctor needs the Eagles. E-L-G-S-E-S Eggleses. That one's not on me.
Well, I forgot that he picked the Eagles.
I love you. That one's on you. Give it to me one more time.
You all say E-L-G-S-E-S Eagles.
Elgises.
Let's go, Birds.
Let's go, Elgises. Let's go get it done. That's what John Proctor's thinking at home right now. All right. This man is not thinking that. I happen to know that. He's very much a left-hand up fella. Joining us now, let's try to make some sense of what it is that the Ravens had to say at their end-of-season press conference. He is a man that you hear over on 105.7 The Fan, covering the teams, shaking it up on the air. He's our buddy Cordell Woodland, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Cordell, what's going on, brother? How are you?
What's up, Glenn?
Hey, man. I'm it's not been a fun week around these parts. I know Cordell's like the only man. Everyone else in Baltimore is just walking around with their heads down this week, and Cordell's like, yeah, that sucks for you, huh? Like, Cordell's like walking around with a middle finger out all week, like, boy, huh? Tough life. That's a real shame being someone who roots for the also-rans of the league. I root for one of the Kings, the finer franchise.
I finally get a bite at the apple, man. Yeah. Usually I'm the guy that's, rooting for the team that's in the dungeon, and now it feels like we're getting into a different era. So I'm still pinching myself to make sure it's real, but I'm embracing it.
All right. Well, you know what? Good for you, I guess. Like I've been very anti-Washington for most of my life, but God, it is really hard to root against Jaden Daniels. He's just a lot of fun. The one opportunity I had to chat with him, great guy. It's hard to root against him. All right, but enough of that. Let's talk about the Ravens. Let's talk about this. Cordell, it's funny because KZ just brought it up. Typically, you go to one of these things, and I hate being this honest about it. You're not gonna get any actual direct answers. That's the way it goes. Like they're gonna give you subterfuge, and that's. I made peace with that a long time ago. They don't like it, but it made me stop. I'm like, what's the? I can't do it. It's hilarious that the one direct answer that they gave was basically the middle finger to Brandon Stevens yesterday. Poor Brandon Stevens. And I don't even know if he realizes what a bullet that is, but, like, they'll never tell you that they're moving on from a player. They'll never say that. But, my God, they didn't waste a lot of time letting you know it's not going to work out here. It's just not going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, you did hear Eric flat out say he's going to test the market, and be a free agent and see what's out there. I feel like in their mind, they probably got their money's worth with Brandon Stevens. They took a shot on a guy that had changed positions, twice before actually coming into the NFL, didn't have a lot of experience playing in the secondary, came in as a safety, and that was a new position, and they end up moving him to corner. Out of really necessity. And he had a really, really good year last year. Took a huge step forward, one that I don't think any of us saw coming. And, coming into this past season, you're wondering what it's going to look like for him. You know, is he going to continue to progress? Is he going to take a step back, maybe stay the same? But definitely a huge step back for Brandon Stevens this year. And look, how much of it is a new defensive coordinator, a lot of changes on the defensive side of the ball, because, you know, we all saw this defense as a whole struggle to start the year, not just Brandon Stevens. Unfortunately, even once the defense turned the corner, it didn't seem like Brandon Stevens ever did. He kind of became the guy that opposing offenses were picking on. So I'm not surprised to see that he's most likely going to test the open market, and we'll see what happens. And look, maybe, just maybe, he's in a cost-friendly situation to where he's back. But yeah, I think that they feel like they got their money's worth with him.
I think based on the way they said that, they're basically telling you it kind of doesn't matter. Like, having read into enough of these over the years, like, you know, they let Ray Lewis test the free agent market once. That's, you know, the people forget that. Like, that happened. They allowed him to become a free agent. But when they talked about it, like, their intent was they very clearly said publicly, we want Ray back. They just let the game play out the way that it did. When they lead with free agency, that's
right.
that smells like, yeah, even if the market isn't what he wants it to be, we're probably going to do something else. And I think that most people around him,
you could make the same argument for Ronnie, honestly, with what they said yesterday. I mean, you listen to how they talk about how Eric DeCosta talked about Patrick Ricard, and to your point, he flat out says we want him back.
Right.
You know, he starts talking about Patrick Ricard possibly getting on his fourth contract with the team. But even when it came to a guy like Ronnie, you know, he talked about the open market with him too. Never really dropped the nugget of, well, you know, we'll see about bringing him back. So I think Ronnie's kind of in the same situation as Stevens right now, honestly.
I am not. The difference with Ronnie is I think they genuinely need the market to be set. Like, I really do think that that's a factor there, is that they need to know what the market is. And I think that what maybe they're letting on is there is a chance that the market goes beyond where we're willing to go, right? Like, that we – I think that what they said about Pat Ricard is very honest, and that they just expect the market to work out, that there's not going to be a robust – if there was a number that Pat Ricard could get in free agency, they would just say, no, man, we can't do that for a fullback. But knowing the game the way they know the game, they just don't think that there's going to be that type of market for a fullback, any fullback, even a really good one. So I think in their heart of hearts, they're saying, we think we know how this is going to play out, and we're comfortable saying we think Pat Ricard's going to be a Raven. Like, just the way that we know the game, the game most likely plays out that he's back to being a Raven. I do think what they're letting on with Ronnie Stanley is that it's possible that it doesn't work out, because they are in a really this is a very tricky spot where it feels like to the most of us they have to have Ronnie Stanley back, but they've got to be thinking internally, like, we've watched this game. We can't end up sinking $25 million a year in someone that's a risk of not playing moving forward. Like, that would doom us. So I don't think that it's fait accompli that Ronnie Stanley's gone the way I think it's fait accompli about Brandon Stevens. But I do think what they were letting on to was that, like, we really do have to see what this market looks like. And if the market goes to a certain place, then there could be a world in which you've got to make a decision there.
No doubt. I mean, look, I think if in a perfect world, they would bring Ronnie back if they could. But I also think, you know, Ronnie's probably the top left tackle that's going to be available in free agency this offseason. He's going to get some money from somebody. I just envision the market kind of solving this problem for the Ravens, to where there's going to be a team that's going to offer Ronnie an amount of money that the Ravens are just, in their mind, have no doubt that they're not even trying to swim in those types of waters, especially with Roger Rosengarten playing so well this year over on the right side, and they feel like they could move him to the left side and he could still continue to progress in his young career. So, and look, what are the odds that Ronnie is as healthy as he was this year and plays at the level that he did this year? It's possible, definitely possible, but I don't think they're willing to take that risk again, especially considering, again, there are going to be teams out there that's going to throw money at Ronnie Stanley. I can bet on that.
I think I don't know. I think it's a weird. I really do wonder if there's a weird in between here, which is, and I think to add to it, I think it's possible that the plan was given how the trajectory had been for Ronnie Stanley, this was always, in their mind, this was going to be Ronnie Stanley's last year. And that's part of the reason why they drafted Roger Rosengarten, and they believed he was going to be their left tackle. He played right tackle for a left-handed quarterback in college, so they believed he could be a blindside tackle, and that was part of the strategy. But I think it gets harder when you're this close, right? Like, you're this close to being a team that can win a Super Bowl. It makes it more difficult. I'm not ready to totally write that off with Ronnie Stanley, but I completely understand what you're saying, and I do think the market ends up dictating the way that goes. I think it's far more difficult to read into what they said about Mark Andrews, because that also comes off to me like I genuinely believe they want Mark Andrews to be a part of this team moving forward, but it doesn't change the complications of clearly he can't play at this salary cap figure this year. They've got to get money back there. The best way to do that is to extend someone, and if you extend Mark Andrews, it's going to have to be at top free agent money when you have Isaiah Likely waiting a year from now to also likely be looking for top free agent money. It is a complicated conversation that can't just be written away by saying no matter what happened on Sunday night, they like Mark Andrews, which I truly believe.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they love Mark. And, Mark has been great. I know Mark's under fire right now, and rightfully so, for, his play. And I don't agree with the way that he's handled it after the game, not speaking to anybody publicly. Other than that, I'm not going to sit here and damn Mark Andrews. He's a franchise leader in touchdowns. He led all tight ends this year in touchdowns. He's been great for the Ravens since he got there. I understand the playoff issues, but I'm sorry. He's done a lot for this franchise to where he has earned some sort of grace. That said, Eric DeCosta said it. All of their tight ends are going into the last year of their contract. I don't foresee a situation where Mark Andrews is still in Baltimore after next year. It's just tough for me to see that. If they didn't have Isaiah Likely, most likely, yes, I would say Andrews is probably a Raven for life, literally a Raven for life as wearing a Ravens jersey. But I think with Likely being as good as he's been, and that's with minimal opportunities, I think you got to see what you have in that dude. I mean, Likely could be a really great player if given an opportunity. And that's not to say that Mark isn't a great player in his own right, but look, it's just the way that the league goes. It's the way all these sports go. As the longer you stay in, somebody else comes up behind you and, you pass the ball off. And I think Likely's next. I really do. So I think Andrews plays this last year under this contract, and I think he's gone next year. I wouldn't be surprised if Marlon is maybe the guy that gets a small-time extension. Like you said, it's a couple of these guys that have major cap hits coming up, and the Ravens are looking for ways to kind of open up their cap room anyway. Lamar could be a restructure. So there's a couple of things that they are probably planning to do. But in terms of Mark, I just don't see him in Baltimore past this next season.
I do think Cordell Woodland is with us from 105.7 The Fan. I think it would be interesting to see if in their minds they say, well, we're not – if the answer to them isn't, well, both Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman aren't going to be here long term, and that's where we can end up spending money on two tight ends is because we're going to move it around from what we would have otherwise spent. Rashad Bateman's obviously very interesting because the deal he did, he's putting himself in line that he can get some money again next year, and I don't know if they're not internally saying, well, that's where the flexibility comes from, is that we're not going to pay the big money to Rashad Bateman, and that's how we could pay two tight ends to keep them both around. But that's tricky because then once again you're in wide receiver hell the way that you've been for much of the history of your franchise.
Yeah, I mean, and Bateman's a weird case, right? Because they did this last extension really to help him out, because he kind of screwed himself with the holdout and some of the contract language to where he kind of messed himself up. So I thought, threw him a bone with that extension. And now I am curious to see what happens. He's coming off of a career year. I wouldn't be opposed to them putting some extra money in Rashad Bateman's pocket, but I also wouldn't be opposed to them saying, "Show me again."
We did you. Yep.
Go be healthy again. Go score double-digit touchdowns again. Go be an impact player in almost every game this season again. I really wouldn't be surprised if they go that route. And could you blame them? I couldn't. So, they are in a tricky situation with a couple of these players, and I am curious to see what type of decisions they do make this offseason to try to get some more money.
Cordell, I do think it would be interesting if they do let Ronnie Stanley walk. Then I think the Patrick McCary. I've been on the flip side that if they prioritize Ronnie Stanley, then Patrick McCary is going to be gone. Like, he's just going to be the guy that ends up pricing himself out of Baltimore. But if the answer to them is we just can't pay that money to Ronnie Stanley and we can't take that risk, then I do think it's a fascinating question about, does that make them more inclined to pay Patrick McCary so they're not doing the same thing they did a year ago where they're turning over so much of their offensive line again?
Yeah, and like you said, this is a team that's got Super Bowl aspirations, and that was the big head scratching thing coming off of last season, is how they decided to, pretty much revamp their entire offensive line, 3 of the 5 spots after hosting an AFC Championship game. That's kind of unheard of. And now you're talking about potentially doing it again. I think McCary is tricky as well because he's always had the injury issues with his back problems, and he was able to hold up this whole year. That was a big concern for them going into the season. Could McCary hold up? That's why they initially didn't want to start him. But he was able to hold up, play well enough. And I just think when it comes to offensive linemen, every team needs them. So teams are always willing to overpay in some cases, for offensive linemen, especially when they're coming from good teams. And I just wonder how far the Ravens are willing to go when it comes to paying Patrick McCary when they know what his injury history is more than anybody else. They know probably what his injury future projects out to be. They probably know how he won't hold up going forward. So how much are they really willing to commit to him? I don't know. I think McCary is another one that probably could get more on the open market than what the Ravens are willing to pay him. But maybe, him being here for as long as he has, he takes it. But I just get a feeling, especially with him being late in his career and him having the injury questions that he's had throughout his career, if he doesn't just want to cash out right now. So I think the offensive line is definitely one of the key position groups to watch this offseason for the Ravens to see how they go about keeping that group together.
Cordell, one of the scenarios that we were talking about the other day with Brian McFarland, of course, Ravens salary cap expert for Russell Street Report, is there a time where the Ravens kind of become un-Ravens-like, right? And, do they do the thing where they max out extensions and rework deals and do something that's a little bit more all in than what we're used to the Ravens doing? And to the point, there would still be a limit to that. You'd be doing that in part to try to keep Ronnie Stanley and then still be able to add a couple of pieces. But the theory is just very un-Ravens-like. Since winning the first Super Bowl and then trying to keep that group together, their organizational philosophy has never been that 1 year means any more than another year. Their philosophy is, we want to be in the mix every year. And if we do that, then one of those years will break through and win the Super Bowl, and it's worked for them to a lesser extent. But broadly, does it feel like if there was a time to be a bit more aggressive and take some risks salary cap-wise, if there was ever a moment to do it, boy, does it feel like this is the moment to consider doing that, given the weight of all of the playoff shortcomings in recent years.
Yeah, I just don't think they will. Like you said, it's just not who they are. And if anything, I agree. This is definitely a time where you'd imagine that they would do it, but also probably back when once they realized that they had something special with Lamar and he was still on that rookie deal, that's probably when you're like, all right, let's go all in. Let's get uncharacteristic. And to a degree, I think they've done some uncharacteristic things. It may not equate to necessarily, quote, going all in. But going to get Odell Beckham is kind of, that's not necessarily their MO last year. Trading for Deontay Johnson this year, that's not necessarily their thing either. So I think they have tried to take some swings and make some calculated risk in their mind. And it's always like they're going to try, but just not do enough. Like, in my mind, the Ravens are, like you said, they're okay with just being a team that's in the fight in hopes that maybe one year they'll break through. But they just seem like a team to me that just wants to marginally get better, just to say that they did it. Like with the Beckham thing, they go get Beckham, but no, they're not going to go get D-Hop. They're not going to take that next level to go get a guy like that. They don't go and get these premier pass rushers. They'll go get Kyle Van Noy, but they're not going to go get like a Brian Burns when he was available or somebody like that. It's just they're just not really willing to go all the way to the point to where you can categorize it as all in. And they want to build through the draft. They want to, have all this homegrown talent. They don't want to be in cap hell. They want to be financially responsible. I get all that. And it's tough for me to disagree, but also you got to try to find a way to capitalize on your window. And make no mistake about it, I think going to get Derrick Henry is a kind of all-in type of move. That was kind of an all-in type of move to get him. And the fact that it didn't pan out, it makes it even more unfortunate.
Really does. It's what it is. And I think you're probably right that that's just, it's not who they are, and they're not going to change, and they're not going to suddenly bucket, and they believe that if they have the core of this team back together next year, they're going to be in a very similar position. And I just can't argue that. It's frustrating, and fans want to yell and scream, but like that's what I expect. I expect that if they keep the majority of these players together and have a relative amount of injury luck, then they're going to be right back in this position a year from now, and we'll see how whatever that game is plays out.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's that. I mean, look, you got a Lamar Jackson at quarterback. They'll always have a chance. Derrick Henry will be back next year. The offense, it looks like Todd Monken isn't going anywhere, at least as of now, the way that a lot of these head coaching jobs are shaping out. Looks like the Jaguars' job will be gone soon, and it doesn't look like Monken is one of the finalists. So I think he'll be back. I think that's a huge move. If the defense can kind of not take 10 games to get their stuff together, and if Tucker isn't costing them maybe 2 to 3 games, who knows? But they'll always have a shot, and I think for them that's enough to feel like they've done enough, and in hopes that the players will do their part in January to kind of get them over the hump. But that just hasn't been the case yet.
That's the reality. That's what they're dealing with. All right, Cordell, how good you feeling going into Sunday?
I feel great, honestly. I do. I'm still playing with house money.
Yeah, I get
win
that
or lose.
Right.
I feel good. It's a division game. Anything can happen. These teams are split. I'm not afraid of Philly. I don't think the Commanders are afraid of Philly. If anything, all the pressure is on Philly to win this game. And I think they're ready to fold. I really do. I think they're ready to fold. Their defense is great. I don't have a bad word to say about the defense. Offensively, Saquon's a dog. But I think if you can find a way, and it's very tough, but if you can find a way to limit Saquon and force Jalen Hurts to be the one to beat him, I feel great about that because I think the Commanders have the better quarterback.
I think he's been the best quarterback in the NFC since about the midway point of the season. Like, nobody wanted to talk about it, but that's the reality. At Cordell Woodland, that's how you follow him. When are we hearing you over on the Fan?
Yeah, I'll be back on Saturday, actually. I got a show from 4 to 6 on Saturday, so kind of start looking ahead. Continue to talk about the Ravens going into the offseason, of course, but with the conference championship games the next day, we'll definitely take a hard look at that as well.
Sounds great, brother. Love you, appreciate you. Good luck on Sunday, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Appreciate it, Glenn.
It's Cordell Woodland with us here on GCR, shaking it up over on 105.7 The Fan. Interesting that Cordell is a little bit more convinced that the way in fairness, as I read back over the transcript of what it is they said when asked about Ronnie Stanley, I'm not with Cordell, but I get what he's coming off. Like, there's nothing in there where they're going on about how they want Ronnie Stanley. And maybe that's just I do think it's in the subtlety, but I'll reread how the question was asked and how it was answered during yesterday's press conference. So it was actually Vinny Serrato who asked the question. Said, what about the left side of your offensive line? Patrick McCary and Ronnie Stanley are both free agents. Ronnie is 31 years old and had a healthy year this year. What are you hoping to do there? Eric DeCosta. I think our goal is to always have the best offensive line that we can have. We made a tough call last year to go younger and have some younger guys play, and we knew we'd have a few growing pains. I think we had a few, but looking back on it, I think it was absolutely the right thing to do, and we saw our guys improve and get better and really mesh as a unit and gel. We are aware that we have some guys whose contracts are up, and we'll look at that and certainly have some discussions with players. We'll look at potentially bringing back our guys. We'll look at the draft. We'll look at free agency. We'll overturn every rock to find as many good offensive linemen as we can. And I think we have some good young players on the team. They've shown that. And one thing we've seen over the years with that position is that guys get better as they get older and more established. They get in the weight room, they get stronger and play better. So that's going to be the case with the guys we have. We're blessed to have really good coaches and some good young players, but also we realize we're going to have conservatively 10 or 11 draft picks this year, free agency, and still a chance to get some deals signed with those guys.
I mean,
it's not like in comparison to the way he talked about Pat Ricard.
Right.
I can see where you'd say, hey, there's a stark difference. Now, in there, he does say, we'll look at potentially bringing back our guys. It's not nearly as dismissive as Brandon Stevens. Like, the response on Brandon Stevens is very much, dude, he gone. Like, that's the hang on a second. He's a free agent, so there's a lot of pressure on him and in his mind. We'll have to see what he's probably going to have a chance to test the market and see what his value is. At no point does he say anything like that about Ronnie Stanley. He does not bring up
right.
like
He doesn't bring up the market. He doesn't
right.
bring up free agency.
But it's a complicated question. He was asked about two guys, not one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like Eric is cerebral in those moments. Eric hears exactly what the question is that's asked. He's not going to do you any favors. A lot of times as reporters, we know that someone won't like addressing something directly, so we try to find another way to address it. This is the game of chess. On that side, they've gotten a little bit more in tune to that being the strategy of asking questions, and so they're more inclined to simply answer the question that you ask. Vinny Serrato doesn't want to ask, although Vinny Serrato's not really a reporter, so it's a little bit different for him. Like, he doesn't want to ask, is Ronnie Stanley going to be back next year? Because they can't answer that question. Like, they can't tell you that. But how do I ask a question that addresses Ronnie Stanley? Well, all you asked was, what do you think about that left side of the offensive line? Well, guys could be back. Guys could. It is a cerebral answer. It's rare when they give you something directly. I famously bring up the time the late Lorenzo Taliaferro, in a pre-draft press conference, somebody asked about the running backs in the draft. And I don't even remember who the running backs, the big ones were. But Eric DeCosta ran through those, and like the question was asked this way. I was wondering if you could break down, I don't know if it was Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproul, whoever the names were. They said like four of the names, some of the top running backs in the class. And Eric DeCosta answered the question and said, well, yeah, he broke down like, Ryan Matthews, Darren Sproul, so-and-so, Lorenzo Taliaferro. And like in a moment, I'm just like, nobody asked you about Lorenzo Taliaferro. No one did. And I remember going back to the radio station that day and saying to my then producer, Ryan Chell, you need to track down Lorenzo Taliaferro. And he was like, who's that? Like, you need to track him down right now because that guy is going to be a Baltimore Raven. He was just like, what? Listen to me. Get in touch with him. Find him. He's going to be a Baltimore Raven. There are times where...
And you got lucky.
Yeah, I got lucky. If you really parse... I don't know how to really parse the Ronnie Stanley answer. I really don't. I think the genuineness there is it could go either way. I mean, it really could. It could be that this is it. That this is they realize that the market just might price Ronnie Stanley out of Baltimore, and that they, as much as they love Ronnie Stanley, as much as he played well and helped them get close, they know there's a possibility he doesn't come back. We're going to do the end-of-season pats and slaps. There's a real part of me that wants to change the rules for end-of-season pats and slaps because it is so difficult. It is so difficult to put two offensive players on the slaps list. It really requires.
I agree.
It really requires you to.
I was like, oh, Deontay Johnson.
But even that's nonsense.
I know.
Right? We're gonna keep the rules because that's how the game is played. But maybe we do another segment, like on next week or something, where we take a bolder look. We're the rules are gonna ruin this as like a great evaluation. But I would like to do a better evaluation, right? I'd like to do that because we're gonna pick somebody who's barely there. I do have one offensive player that was like a big part of it, and I think he fairly is going to get slapped.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll deal with that. We'll do pats and slaps for the season. We come back in Glenn Clark Radio.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
Why are they doing that? What is that all about? I just saw that like last week. Like to make it office space, to make it it's like one of the few here. John Colson's here. John was just downtown for the CIAA tournament.
CIAA tournament.
Big press conference. We're excited about that. Griffin, remind everybody of the CIAA tournament, please.
I would love to. Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament to CFG Bank Arena once again from February 25th through March 1st. Your tickets are available now. Get them at Ticketmaster.com. Again, Ticketmaster.com for your tickets to the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena February 25th through March 1st.
So they had a great press conference.
I had no idea how much they have going on around that tournament.
Oh, well, you haven't been paying attention.
Well, I have, but it's even more. And they're doing. It's $32 million, I think it was, worth of economic impact.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's significant.
It's crazy. The convention is out. Is incredible.
So the
and all
hotel
the
rooms are at 75% occupancy. Typically for that week in February, they're 30%.
Yeah, people don't realize how significant this is. But again, that's on the side. The event was at the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
So last week, almost under the shadow of night.
Yeah.
We find out they're closing the observation deck.
Correct.
At the top of the World Trade Center.
Yes.
Now, the World Trade Center is not going anywhere. That floor is not going anywhere.
No.
They're just going to close.
And the building has plenty of office space for lease.
I'm so befuddled by this. I don't know where to begin.
I can't. I asked 2 or 3 people that I would think would know.
Yeah.
And there's seem to be no details that anybody's given. I'm not a reporter, so but I was curious. I don't know.
I am so.
If I had to guess, I would say it's losing money somehow.
But how?
I guess it has to be. There has to be security, and there probably has to be somebody up there all the time.
Presumably, they have to have security.
They have to pay taxes. They have to pay rent. I don't know.
But the city was running it.
The city runs it, but they don't own the building.
I understand. The city doesn't own the building?
No.
Okay, I don't think I knew that part.
Yeah.
That is news to me.
Yeah.
So is the idea that it could be privately, there could still be an observation deck.
It's going to be the
but
Clark Colson observation
I think we
deck.
should.
We'll charge.
Do you understand how if you went today to visit Chicago, you can't all of the towers.
Oh, I know.
If you tried to go, if you just found out I got a day in Chicago tomorrow, and I don't even know what they're called anymore because they're not even the Sears and the Hancock Towers anymore. They have stupid names now. But if you wanted to go to the observation deck on the Sears Tower, they'd be like, right, well, we can get you in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Every other
the World
city,
Trade Center cost $80 in New York.
Right.
$80 to go up to the deck and look around.
And I understand that this one is not as tall as these other buildings that we're talking about, but at the same time, it's the only view that it's the only thing like
you
this.
can see the key. Oh, never mind.
Don't do that. God. Jesus. What's wrong with you?
A little bit.
Got into you.
A little bit wrong.
But my point being that we don't have these types of. There's not an alternative here.
Correct.
You can go to another.
You'd see the Bay Bridge.
Thank you. But the point is, there's not anywhere else to go that you can just go for an observation to look out on the rest of the city.
Correct.
It doesn't exist.
You can join the Center Club.
You can join the Center Club. You can get a room at the top of one of these hotels.
Yeah.
There's no other. There's not another observation deck.
Fully agree. It's amazing to me.
Well, okay. So we went to see Moving Out or something. We went to a musical, and I was still trying to talk.
Woo, you were wooing.
I was wooing this young lady. I was probably 20 at the time, something like that. And we go. I said, "Have you ever gone up to the observation deck at the World Trade Center?" She was like, "No, I've never gone." I'm like, "Let's go. Let's do it." It's something that I had done as
here's my $6.
Yeah, a school kid or whatever. Yeah. But I hadn't done it as at that point in my life, and I probably haven't gone since, for what it's worth. But I went, I did it, and we got on the elevator to go back down. We get to the bottom of I don't know what I was thinking, but we get back to the bottom. There's all these people waiting to go up, and I instead hit closed door.
Oh my!
And it's just the two of us, and we just start kissing. And it was and she just thought it was the most baller.
Romantic.
She thought it was she was like that was a move. You nailed that one. So I have romantic feelings.
Likewise, my senior prom was on that observation deck.
I'm telling you.
So
what are we doing here? Oh, you know what?
So the memories abound.
That might have been where my wife's. Oh no, I think it was at the Cloisters or whatever. I think that's what.
Yeah, which is not at all like.
Yeah, not remotely similar. But I was trying to think. She said it was like a landmark type of place. Yeah. I think it was the Cloisters. It's so dumb. What are we doing?
I don't know.
All right, so how do we? Can you look into that for
Yeah.
us?
I really want to find out. It's driving me nuts. I've been thinking about it all week.
We can. It can be the press box observation deck.
I couldn't agree more.
The J-Moore observation deck, whatever we want to make it. We can do the show from there every day. And
now that would be cool.
I would try to add some value to this. Try to make it a thing.
That would be cool.
I can't figure out.
You want
to
do the show from the new Costas place at the Timonium Racetrack?
From the new Costas. I love Costas. I love everything about it. Very excited. I'm very
meet with them on Monday.
What day is? Do we know a date yet for the?
I don't think they're in construction now, so
I
I'm
know.
thinking that they're looking at March, I believe.
Okay, all right.
I know they want to get open
Could we
before
do like
Preakness.
the first day of the NCAA tournament?
Ooh.
Don't know. I'll be finding out on
That
Monday.
would be
Pete, if you're listening, we want to do live shows there.
Pete, listen to me.
He does listen.
I know he does. I love Pete. You know I love Pete.
Yeah.
I love both of those guys. Pete and Nick, they couldn't be better to me.
I think Nick's asleep, though, because he's at Costas late, so I don't think he
crazy.
listens.
He's crazy. And also, they couldn't be better to me. And I'm going to be there way more frequently now that they're
Yeah,
like, to be aware. I'm going to be hanging out a lot.
I will be there as well.
Now that you're over on my side of town. Let's do the NCAA. That'd be perfect.
That would be really fun.
Unless, somebody else has plans for that.
Some live casino, Pete. There's some.
Yeah,
some
I was
going
to say,
on.
if there's other
There's
options
plenty,
on the table.
There's plenty to go around.
Ken Zalis was just trying to demand that we inform him if we're doing a draft show, because if not, he's not going to bother paying attention to the draft. I
Ken's
swear to God.
lying.
I know that's true. I know that's true. But I do think that he'll pay less attention.
I agree with
to
that.
the draft.
The question is, do you really think he'll pay more attention than he would have
Yes.
if the show's going on?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. Knowing Ken, yes.
Okay.
I do believe that.
So you're
part.
giving him an excuse to pay more because I think he really wants to, but he's made a promise, a familial
It's sort
promise.
of like that, yes. That's where we are. All right, you got
Okay,
anything
guys.
else?
No, live
All right,
casino.
Let's work. Love them. Love them. Can you get us a new live read, by the way?
Yeah,
Okay.
I emailed her yesterday.
And again, let's look on opening the press box observation deck.
Or we call it the Glenn Clark observation.
I don't care what it is. I feel like there's
the press box observation deck presented by.
Yeah,
Glenn
whatever
Clark.
it. Who cares what it is? It just seems like what. I've never been more flummoxed by anything. Like normally when people say that something's closing, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was actually kind of thrown by it.
This
too, and
one,
I'm not sure why. Maybe
blew,
because my prom was there.
Unless there is no other thing like this.
Correct.
Like when a restaurant closes, I'm like, that sucks, but there's a million other restaurants. We don't have another. Hey, there's somebody in town that's never been to Baltimore before. Yeah. Let's take them and show them the city. Like we don't have another observation deck like that I'm. Like public that I'm aware of.
Better get to the Preakness this year, by the way. Next year it's at Laurel. So there you go.
Probably next 2 years. It's gonna be Laurel.
They're saying one now.
I know they're
we'll
saying
see.
That. But they are always saying that.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. I need to call Terry a liar. No, just tease it. I'll talk to you later.
Right,
have a good one.
That's John Colson, most worshipful grandmaster. All right, pats and slaps for the year. I totally forgot to put it out there for everybody else to get their lists in. So this is just going to be ours. That's the way. We're not gonna have a $50 Costas gift card to give them. I guess we could do it in retrospect.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do it the rest of the day. You can get yours in. You know the deal. Same rules as always. 5 players or 5 Ravens. 2 must be offensive players. 2 must be defensive players. The 5th can be another offensive player, another defensive player, a special teams player, or a coach. You take your list of 5. You rank them 5 to 1, with 1 being your man of the year or anti-man of the year on the slaps list. To get it out of the way, yes, you could put someone on both lists. That is an option. I know that's happened. Oh, hello. That's happened for us in the past. I will tell you it did not happen for me this year. There is no one that was on both lists. So, but you can if you so choose.
I did not have that either.
My number. We'll start with slaps. We tear down to build up. Right.
Okay.
My number 5, you mentioned him earlier, will be Deontay Johnson. It's very difficult. This only speaks to the fact that there are so few options among offensive players to choose. He was barely there, but they really could have used wide receiver depth in the end, and his shenanigans hurt them. So this is the place. You can't put him higher on the list because he didn't impact the team enough. Number 5 is Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, because it was between him and because I don't like doing 2 players from one position group either, I guess. But I think I'm gonna stick with my number 5. I'm gonna make it Tyler Linderbaum as my number.
He is higher 5 on my list.
Okay. Because of the way things ended on Sunday, he did not have.
I'll just tell you,
game.
he's number 4 for me, and it's not just about Sunday at all. It's that for as much as we put out the stat there that he didn't allow a sack all season, and that's great, but typically the best edge rushers
are not lining up.
Are not coming. Yeah. Not to say they don't ever stunt or we understand that, but to me that's a smaller part of the overall grade of a center. And when searching Tyler Linderbaum bad snap, you're not just coming away with what happened on Sunday. You're coming away with bad snaps from Week 18. You're coming away with, obviously, the thing against the Commanders, which was an unbridled disaster. The one against the Bengals that we all remember for the magic that happened afterwards, but, started with a bad snap. Tyler Linderbaum is an all-pro caliber player. Tyler Linderbaum is someone that we're talking about that the Ravens need to pay big money to keep around. And when you're judging under those qualifications, that bad snaps are oftentimes, we have just baked them into the cake with Tyler Linderbaum, that's not okay. I get it. This is all in context. There are other, if you want to say the fact that Ben Cleveland has never broken through is why you're going to put Ben Cleveland on your list, fine. But for someone that we have expectations for, real expectations, for this to constantly be a part of the story, constantly, not just in a playoff game, regularly talking. And I get it. It's, if somebody, Lamar Jackson throws incomplete passes too. I'm not trying to make it seem like Tyler Linderbaum stinks. He doesn't. I just said he's an all-pro caliber player. But based on that context of being an all-pro caliber player, it is far more frequent than you would be comfortable with from an all-pro caliber center. There are so many bad snaps. And we don't have a good statistic for that. I'm sure somewhere they have we have so much data in the NFL. There's got to be somebody that's got a rate for
snap percentage.
And maybe they would tell you that Tyler Linderbaum is still among the highest. I don't know. But, God, it is way too much of a theme for me to ignore. He was number 4 on my list.
He was 5 on my list. I mean, everything that you laid out. Obviously, the expectations are there for this guy. He's a first-round center. He is, as you said, a guy that everyone kind of, without batting an eye, we are he's part of the future here. Linderbaum's on my list. And then I went with McCary as my number 4. Just because there were no... He was the weakest part of the offensive line. The penalties were such a major factor.
That's really hard
the
for me
season.
because so many of the penalties were the downfield stuff.
I understand,
that's
they did clean it up a little bit later in the season, but for it to linger as long as it did, and for the offensive line to be the story, the biggest story, in the early part of the season when they were struggling in September. Patrick McCary was on my list. He didn't have, and again, this is also credit to the offense. The offense, it was hard to figure out with 2 guys on here. So McCary at 4, Linderbaum 5 for me.
It's tough for me. Number 3 is where I put Justin Tucker, and there's a lot of defensive players that can thank the fact that Justin Tucker keeps them from being on the list. I say a lot. There's a couple, really. It's not a lot. That would be unfair to say. There's a few guys. And you can say Eddie Jackson isn't going to be able to make the list because of Justin Tucker, right? He would have been on the list had it not been for Justin Tucker. David Ajabo was someone that I considered, but again,
did you consider Trenton Simpson at all?
A little bit, but I don't know that Trenton Simpson was hurting the team as much as
the expectation thing.
Yeah, in fact, when he played, I thought he was largely okay. Fine, whatever you want to say. It's just that then Malik Harrison had to get in there and he looked really good, and
Chris Board looked really good.
I remember bringing that up with Femi too, on the postgame show. Dude, do you think about that at all? How good Malik Harrison looked, and no disrespect to Trenton Simpson. I remember Femi being dismissive of it that day, and I was like, he's probably right. You don't lose your job because you miss a game. That's not the way this works. But I didn't think that Trenton Simpson was bad. And my gut tells me that they still think that Trenton Simpson could be a starting caliber, inside linebacker. But, yeah, I thought about a lot of those guys. But ultimately, Justin Tucker has to be on this list. And you could argue he needs to be higher on this list.
He's going to be higher on mine.
Yeah, and I get that. I don't have a problem with that. I just think the other 2 candidates are whatever. We'll get to that. But Justin Tucker has to be on this list and has to be pretty high on it. So he's number 3.
I went with Brandon Stevens as my number 3 here.
My number 2.
Yeah. I mean, he was picked on. He was singled out very, very often throughout the season. And I mean, I guess, credit to him for, he showed up and played every single week, but he was not good. He was very clearly especially after the defense turned things around, he was very clearly, as Cordell said, he was the worst player on the defense. And the opposing teams knew that. And it's hard to I guess single out any specific, maybe the Raiders game when Devontae Adams started just, when they had him one-on-one with Devontae Adams every single play, that really hurt. But yeah, Stevens is on the list. He's my number 3.
Look, man, it was funny when Cordell was bringing that up. One of the other factors, too, is that how do you make sense of what we thought of Brandon Stevens a year ago to where we are with Brandon Stevens now? Some of it might simply be there's more film, right? Like there's just more teams looked and said, you guys notice that like he's there, but he's not really playing the ball? Because we didn't. If he was really playing the ball last year, and the problem, there was no problem last year, so we weren't paying attention to that. That became obvious to us this year. Maybe in hindsight, it was happening last year too, and teams just didn't have the same amount of tape and the same amount of knowledge to say, hey, even if he's there and sticky, throw the ball anyway because he's not playing the ball. I think Brandon Stevens can play in the NFL. I think he is an NFL caliber player. And maybe he will learn to play the ball. Like maybe.
How old is he?
I don't know. But like he also had to move positions,
right.
And he's been like it might be that whoever it is that signs him says, dude, we got a really good foundation to work with. The good foundation we have to work with is he's sticky in coverage. That's worth paying him to say, hey, we're going to pay you, but you're going to spend every day working with this specialist that we know and learning how to play the ball. And that for another team that doesn't have the same expectations, the Jacksonville Jaguars, whoever it is, they have the ability to say,
the Raiders.
Yeah, we can work with this. We can work with what we've got because there's the foundation of a capable football player there. But for the Ravens, yeah, not going to be what it is.
He's 27 heading into year 5, by the way. So.
But there were coordinator changes, there were position changes. It's been a complicated, 4 years for Brandon Stevens here. And it might very well be that if he just gets to another place, and they know that going in, they know what they're getting, and they say, we know a specialist, you're going to spend your summer working with this person and improving your ball skills. Because we like everything else about you. Ball skills have to change. So, yeah, he's number 2 on my list. Your number 2?
My number 2, I did have Eddie Jackson on my list. He was my number 2. Marcus Williams was not on my list because of I felt like he wasn't. I mean, he was not a good deep safety, but he was still a serviceable football player. They didn't feel the need to kick him off the team. He
couldn't kick him off the team. They were paying him an exorbitant amount of money,
and he still handled it like I don't know. He could have turned it into a circus.
And
he
idea.
didn't. Eddie Jackson will forever be stained in my mind as, especially the Browns game against Jameis Winston when he is playing, and the Bengals game on that Thursday night where he is running the complete opposite direction of Jamar Chase. Eddie Jackson was the worst defensive player on the Ravens this season.
He was barely a part of the conversation. Marcus Williams is number 1. Marcus Williams.
Oh, he's number 1? Okay.
Yeah.
Justin Tucker is my number 1.
And I have no beef with that part. No beef with that. Marcus Williams, it's a sad story because when they signed Marcus Williams, it was looking like one of the best signings in Ravens history, but it ended up being empty, wasted money. And the dichotomy of how much better the team got the moment that it was no longer involving Marcus Williams is really hard to
Eddie Jackson
ignore.
also wasn't involved.
I understand what you're saying, but again, there was no expectations for one of them. The other one needed to be a football player. One of them was being paid real money to be a football player. The other one was not. Marcus Williams, number 1 with the bullet. The emptiest money there was. As far as Pats are concerned, again, this one was tough because you can only pick 5, and there's just so many guys that you want to put on this list. Ultimately, number 5, the third offensive player was very difficult for me because I think Ronnie Stanley was very deserving. Had it not been,
Garden, I threw some consideration towards.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Had it not been for, certainly Isaiah Likely and Rashad Bateman in smaller doses were guys that were great all year long in the roles that they had, very, very much nailed what they were asked to do. Had it not been for the final game of the season, Mark Andrews would be right in this conversation.
Yeah.
But Justice Hill is certainly somebody that was very worthy of consideration. But look, Zay Flowers was awesome, and it sucks that he got hurt, and that
we're not gonna know what's.
It sucks, but Zay Flowers was awesome this year, and was deserving of a Pro Bowl selection. He's not a prototype wide receiver, but my God, is he basically everything that you could ask for in a football player. Zay Flowers is number 5.
He was my number 5 as well. Obviously, 1,000-yard season. I mean, the so many different flashes were there of why this guy was drafted in the first round. This is why you think this guy is for the first time ever a Ravens Pro Bowler at the position. Zay Flowers was number 5, and I mean, tough to not put him higher on the list, but he comes in at number 5.
Number 4, I actually really did not have any struggles at all with the 2 defensive players. I thought there were 2 that just stood out so significant. Again, to say take nothing away from Ardarius Washington, who definitely deserves praise. This is why maybe we do a more complete sort of look at the whole team. Ardarius Washington deserves a whole heaping of praise. Marlon Humphrey had a great year, but to me, Kyle Van Noy, it's inarguable. Kyle Van Noy, I actually thought about putting him higher than Kyle Hamilton on the list because he was so impactful this season. But Kyle Van Noy ends up being number 4 for me.
Kyle Van Noy does not make my list.
Insane.
Because I did have the other 2 guys mentioned. I put Hamilton at 4 and then Marlon at 3 because of the the expectations for Hamilton are so high, and we knew that he was going to be on this list at the end of the year. And Marlon, I think there were question marks around Marlon Humphrey, and he was very deservedly played at an All-Pro level. Marlon Humphrey.
I love Marlon Humphrey.
3.
He's deserving of it. Kyle Hamilton single-handedly changed the defense. He has to be the highest-ranked defensive player on this list. He's number 3. He's number 3.
Hamilton 4, Marlon 3.
And unfortunately, there's no debate about 2 and 1. I mean, it's just
John Harbaugh, yep.
Right, Jordan Stout. Yep, those are the guys. No, look, man. Derrick Henry was somehow even more than I thought he was going to be, which is just crazy. And it's funny, when KZ says, well, Derrick Henry's only here for 1 more year. And I'm just like, yeah? Yeah? Is he, though? And I don't know. The Ravens were asked yesterday about extending Derrick Henry, and it is, again, one place where you could get a little bit of money cap-wise. I don't know what Derrick Henry might be thinking to himself. All of a sudden, all the running backs are about to get paid, and I do want to get back to free agency after next year, but he'll be 32, and that makes it.
And Lamar Jackson's not going to be anywhere else like this.
It might very well be that if you go to him and say, "Hey, dude, can we just add another year?" We have no reason to think that you're a year away from falling off the cliff. Can we just do this where maybe every time we add 1 more year until we think
a coach's contract?
It's kind of at the end. I get it. There is always danger with running backs in the NFL that there's one day it's going to be over, but there is nothing about what we saw from Derrick Henry that makes us think that it is about to be over. Jesus Christ. So, Derrick Henry's 2, Lamar's 1. Obviously, Lamar's 1.
You got that one right, yeah.
Did I?
Yeah. Do you want the season-long numbers of?
Sure. Now, again, this is difficult because
these are just game by game.
It's game
totals.
it's within the game, right?
Lamar was number 1 for each of us.
40,
41 points on the season for me, 45 for you.
Okay.
Henry was number 2 for both of us as well, 31 for you, 30 for me. And then our number 3 guy. So interestingly, your number 3 guy was Marlon Humphrey, who was not on your end of season list, and then Kyle Van Noy was my number 3 guy.
How about that?
List. Yeah. Marlon Humphrey was 4th on my list. Zay was 4th on your list. Van Noy was top 5, and Zay was top 5 for me as well. Points all across the season. And the bottom 5, McCary was my most slapped player, -8 points. He was your most slapped as well, -11 points. You slapped him even more.
How about that? That sounds like it happened 3 times. Yeah. It just sounds like basically whenever they lost. That's
like McCary. Yeah. Justin Tucker was -7.
How is
your
that
second
possible?
You're on your list.
I guess that says that at some point Justin Tucker was on a Pats list earlier on in the year. That's
the Bengals.
Yeah, maybe the first Bengals game because he kicked the winner. Because there's just no way. He would have had to have been on the list in at least 3 of the losses.
Your bottom 5 were so McCary, Tucker, Stanley, Andrews.
Stanley?
Yeah.
Well, it just means that
early in the season because of the.
It just
false,
means that I didn't.
like,
I didn't give any
penalties.
pats. Really, is what that means.
Andrews.
Yeah, this is why this is not a fair.
Right.
Like we do the exercise, but it's not. It's really not fair because it's just an encapsulation of a game, and if you're not one of the top 5, you can't get any. Positive points.
So Andrews comes in at -5. I think it was the only time on your list, I guess, was this past weekend. So Andrews had -5, as did Eddie Jackson, Harbaugh, Stevens, all -5 on your list. And then my bottom.
It's a miracle that Brandon Stevens was only -5.
McCary was my most slapped player. Then Harbaugh and Tucker were both at -6. Eddie Jackson had -5 on my list. I had Todd Monken at -4, as well as Likely and Andrews. So.
Likely?
I think I had him on my list. I think in the Steelers game when he fumbled right before halftime.
Oh right, yeah, and I told you that it was asinine because he didn't actually fumble.
Well, let's do it back and check the stats. In 30 years from now, that is going to be a fumble on Isaiah Likely's stat record.
Just keep doing that.
And they lost the game by. Let's see, they kicked the field goal right before halftime. They lost by 2.
Just
so
like Derek
pretty
Jeter,
big deal.
Just like Derek Jeter hit a home run in Game 1 of the 1997 ALCS. 1996. Everybody knows that. That was a home run.
That
that pop fly to right field.
If the stat book says it.
All right. Get them up at get yours at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter and Blue Sky. And if you do, we'll let somebody win a $50 gift card to Costa Sin, and we'll get ours posted at glennclarkradio.com a little bit later on today. If you missed Stan the Fan Charles getting together Chris Corman of the Baltimore Banner, you can find it, facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Click on the videos tab, youtube.com/PressBoxOnline, PressBoxOnline.com/video. You can go pick them up there. John says Tucker was probably on fewer slaps lists because they scored touchdowns so often. Well, the problem is we only do slaps for losses.
And he did miss.
And it felt like he missed at least one kick in every loss. I believe that was the stat that we were regurgitating ad nauseum throughout the course of the year. So it's kind of crazy
that he wasn't slapped.
Yeah, right? Like, that's kind of nuts. I have no problem with him being number 1 on your list. I really don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue to get me yours. All right. When we come back in, we'll get a tidbit and Tubi to wind things down for a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special Best of 2024 issue. On the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Lamar Jackson, as Bo Smolka profiles what the quarterback means to the community beyond the football field. Also inside, we celebrate the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always read the entire issue and find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
All right, winding down for a Thursday edition of the program. Today's show has also been brought to you by the Brigance Brigade and their winter soiree. And we just told you yesterday that that's going to feature live music from Jimmy Charles. You know, it's a Maryland thing. You wouldn't understand that guy. Former Towson football player, right? Jimmy Charles, if I remember correctly. It's coming up on February 21st at Martin's West. Their mission to equip, encourage, and improve the quality of life for PALS, those dealing with ALS, and their families by providing access to support services, needed equipment, and resource guidance. O.J. Brigance is one of the true great heroes in the history of Baltimore sports. So support them and what they're doing. BriganceBrigade.org is the website. Again, BriganceBrigade.org, and you can get your tickets. Register now for their winter soiree. They have single tickets available, tables available. Martin's West on February 21st. Again, go to BriganceBrigade.org in order to find out more. All right.
He was a Towson football player.
I thought that was the
linebacker.
case. I thought that was true. Ready to get a tidbit?
Yeah, let's go ahead. We'll figure out which one I want to do here. I mean, we got some more Hall of Fame ones here. Billy Wagner got into the Hall of Fame yesterday. He became the 8th player to get the Hall of Fame nod in their final year of eligibility on the Baseball Writers Association ballot. Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any of the other ones. Can you name the most recent one to do? Actually, we had in 2020 and 2019. Both guys were in their 10th year, and they got in.
Well, one of them was Larry Walker, right?
Larry Walker in 2020, although I guess that doesn't count. Or this was before. This would have been before.
It would have been. That's
the
correct.
world ended. Yeah.
And Tim Raines?
Tim Raines was 2017, but yeah, he was a final year guy.
I didn't realize it was that late. I thought it was before that for Tim Raines. Jesus.
2019.
2019? I thought he might have been the 2010 guy. That's the crazy part. Final year. Because Trevor Hoffman didn't have to wait till his final year.
No, not at least according to my stats here.
2019.
He was a position player.
Position player. Position player. I don't remember.
He played third base, and yeah, he spent his entire career with this West Coast team.
Third baseman that played his entire career.
But he played mostly. I guess he was more so at DH.
Oh, Edgar Martinez. Edgar Martinez was not he was a third baseman for like 12 seconds.
So he played DH his entire career?
Almost entirely.
Edgar Martinez.
It's a bad. That's why saying position player is a bad argument because he didn't really have a position.
Sorry, DH.
But still, I actually should have remembered that Edgar Martinez was a 10th year guy. I do remember that, but
so Larry Walker, Edgar Martinez, Tim Raines. 2009 was.
2009.
I don't think you're gonna get this one.
Piss. 2009. 10th year of eligibility. So that means that he had to retire in 1994?
Yes.
Yeah,
give or take.
Ryan Sandberg.
No. This class included Ricky Henderson.
Jim Rice went in the same year as Ricky Henderson.
Jim Rice.
Oh, it was Jim Rice?
It was Jim Rice. It was,
I
in
didn't
fact, Jim
realize
Rice.
that Jim Rice was on it. I also didn't realize Jim Rice played till 1994. I
19,
just learned something new today.
1975, Ralph Kiner
okay.
in his 10th year. And then in 1968, Joe Medwick.
Sure.
In 1967, red ruffing.
Obviously.
Obviously, red ruffing.
Red.
He also, he's the second lowest debut vote percentage at 10.5% in 2016.
Okay.
Billy Wagner. Can you name the player with the lowest 10.2% on his first year on the ballot to eventually get elected in?
No idea.
His first year on the ballot was 2018. He's gone in. Was it last year? Got in one of the last 2 years.
From 10%?
10% in 2018 and jumped up all the way to get in one of the last 2 years.
That's a local number calling me.
Did you take it?
20, I don't know. 2018.
He was.
So that means he
2 years
retired in
ago.
2013.
Yes.
Roland?
Yep, Scott Rowland.
Okay.
Scott Rowland, 10.2% in 2018, and he got in 2 years ago with Fred McGriff. And then lower also guys with low percentages to get in. Todd Helton in 2019 was at 16.5%.
Proctor says, "Hey, if you're only an arsonist for 12 seconds, you're still an arsonist."
Thank you, John. And then okay, we can end on this one since we're already at 12:30. Lamar has become the sixth player to get back-to-back as the Pro Football Writers Association yesterday gave him their MVP award. He is the sixth player to win the PFWA, the Pro Football Writers Association MVP, back-to-back years.
You're not actually going to try to think that I know who won the PFW's MVP.
I do think you do, because you're a smart guy.
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning has done it, yeah.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady has not done this.
Writers hate him. Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers has done this, yes. Aaron Rodgers is the only player to do this twice, the PFWA MVP, 2020 and 2021, as well as...
How long does this award go back to?
Sorry, no, he's only done it once.
I mean, how long is
the first guy on this list, 78, he won it.
78.
So 78 and 79. It was the back-to-back PFWA.
78 and 79. Is that Walter Payton?
It's not Walter Payton. You have the position correct.
Earl Campbell.
Earl Campbell, 78, 79. And there's also one more running back on this list.
Barry Sanders.
Not Barry Sanders.
Emmett Smith.
Nope.
Adrian Peterson.
No EP.
LaDainian Tomlinson.
Mm-mm.
Marshall Faulk.
Marshall Faulk in 2000 and 2001. And then one more QB.
John Elway.
Not John Elway.
Joe Montana.
Not Joe Montana.
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre, correct. In 95 and 96. There you go. Was that so hard? Yeah. The PFWA award goes back to 1966, by the way. So.
I already told you I did vote for Lamar Jackson with my PFWA MVP vote. So
good job. Yeah. All right. Well, you were part of history.
I'm the reason.
You're part of history.
It's just you can thank me. All right. Let's go ahead and get tubular, shall we?
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
All right, here's what's coming up totally tubular-wise. By the way, we were just talking about Lamar Jackson being the PFWA MVP. That's too many letters. PFWA MVP.
It's an important award.
Go get this print issue of Press Box with Lamar on the cover right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms. Read it all, pressboxonline.com/bestof. All right, here's what's coming up totally tubular-wise. Maryland, boy, they could really use a road win, huh? They could use one of those. Fox Sports 1 tonight at 9 o'clock as they travel to Illinois.
It's a nice, good opponent to do it against.
A good one. Maryland women, this is yuck. They're at Ohio State. They're in the throes of just an impossibly difficult week.
And they have UCLA on.
Yes, Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well.
6 o'clock tonight on Big Ten Network for the Maryland women. UMBC is at Albany at 6:30. Mount St. Mary's is at Siena at 7. Both of those are on ESPN+. Towson at home tonight at 7 against North Carolina A&T on Flow Sports. Australian Open men's semifinals. The first one at 10:30 on ESPN. Novak Djokovic and Alex Zverev. And then overnight, 3:30 a.m. for Yannick Sinner and Ben Shelton. The rest of the college basketball, find at glennclarkradio.com. NBA tonight, Monumental, Wizards Clippers, 10:30. NBA TV at 2 o'clock this afternoon. The Spurs and Pacers are playing in Paris.
Of course. We all knew that.
Paris.
Yeah.
Victor Wembanyama. That's pretty cool. TNT, True TV, Heat Bucks, 7:30. Celtics Lakers at 10. NHL Monumental 2 for Capitals Kraken at 10 o'clock. And also on ESPN Plus and Hulu, Hockey Club and Wild at 8 o'clock. Golf Channel for round 2 of the PGA Farmers Insurance Open at 3 o'clock. Access TV for TNA Impact at 8. Non-sports?
A few things. New episodes of Animal Control and Going Dutch on Fox. Morris Chestnut and Drew Brees will be on Stephen Colbert tonight.
Sure. They're plugging. I think everyone knows that. I can't even think of something good here. I believe.
They're both in Flight Risk, that Mark Wahlberg movie.
Is that what they're playing?
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. Well, actually, Morris Chestnut. There's a new show on CBS.
He was on.
This weekend.
He was on First Take the other day.
Morris Chestnut was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Good for him. New episodes of Impractical Jokers, of course, on TBS tonight. The Traitors on Peacock. Beast Games on Prime Video, and it is the season 3 finale of everyone's favorite show, The Sex Lives of College Girls on HBO Max. Yeah.
I told you I tried. It's just not for me. That's it?
That is it, yes.
Very good. I got to come up with other movies that are coming out soon.
Well, January's always a dead time.
Captain America's coming out next month.
Yeah,
right? I'll use that one. All right, thanks everybody at Pressbox. All of our great sponsors. Did I thank who was on the show? Do I do that first? How do I do the show? Thanks today to Joe Miller. Thanks to KZ. Thanks to Cordell. We'll get that up in the greatest hits section of the
Can You Take Me Higher
tab at glennclarkradio.com. Tomorrow on the program, we'll continue to remember Pete Medhurst. Chet Gladchuk, Navy Athletic Director, will join us. Also on the program tomorrow, Stan will be in studio. Bo will join us as he does every Friday. J.J. Cooper?
We can. Yes, J.J. Cooper can join us tomorrow.
You tell me.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
He will.
We'll talk about the Baseball America's new Top 100 prospect list, which has not quite as many Orioles prospects as it's had in the past.
And we'll be talking about a big Terps win as well.
Oh, I hope. I thought you said there was somebody else. Oh, Ben Wagner.
Oh, yes, yes.
Orioles
Ben Wagner
broadcaster Ben Wagner joins us tomorrow. Thanks to everybody at Pressbox, all of our great sponsors and partners. Visit Harford, Live Casino and Hotel, Cruise Maryland, Crown Trophy, Easy Pass, Royal Farms, CIAA Tournament, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Costa Sin, MSAA, Maryland Sports, Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Thursday evening. Go Maryland, go Towson, go UMBC, go Maryland women, go Mount St. Mary's. Duke sucks.